Thank you very much. I will then call the May 14th SANDAG Board of Directors meeting to order. Good morning, everybody. Chair Blakespear sends her regards. She is in Yosemite this week celebrating her grandmother's 100th birthday. I've always been a believer in family first, so I'm glad she's dedicating her time today to honoring her grandmother, and you all are stuck with me. So I will do my best to make sure we run an efficient and effective meeting this morning. Before we get started, I'd like to ask our interpreter, Carlos, to introduce himself and walk through how to access our interpretation services for today's meeting. Carlos, will you please proceed?
Mayor Gloria, thank you very much. Good morning. As was just indicated, we will have interpretation available in both directions, from Spanish to English and English to Spanish. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll down to the bottom of your Zoom screen where you see your meeting controls. Then click on the interpretation icon. It looks like a little world, and then select English as your language. If you are joining through a Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, the three dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. And finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. I will now repeat these instructions in Spanish. Buenos días, vamos a contar con servicio de interpretación simultánea. Para hacer uso del servicio, le pedimos desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom donde aparecen sus controles, hacer clic en el icono de interpretación, parece un globo terráqueo, y seleccionar Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en celular, tableta, etc., presione primero los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Por último, si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio o silenciar audio original. Gracias, and thank you, Mayor.
Carlos, I could listen to you talk all morning. You're definitely in the right line of work. Thank you very much for your help this morning. Board members, will you now please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Board, I'm going to ask to reorder the agenda to take our public comment, member communications at the end of our agenda. We have the potential of having an extremely lengthy meeting. I'm concerned about making sure we maintain quorum. So without objection, I will do that. That brings us to the Executive Director's Report. Hassan, would you like to make your presentation?
Yes, Mayor Gloria, good morning. Members, thank you. A couple of items very quickly because of the long agenda today. I want to thank Supervisor Tara Larson Rimmer for her and her colleagues' work at the county, Supervisor Anderson, Vargas, Fletcher, Desmond for voting 5-0 to partner with SANDAG and Caltrans to get funding on the 67 to lay out broadband. This is an amazing accomplishment, the first in its kind in the state. It's a great partnership with Caltrans. I want to thank my colleague, Gustavo Delardo, him and his staff. Without their diligence and their work, this wouldn't happen. So thank you, Supervisor Rimmer, especially to your staff who work very hard to put the report together. Appreciate the partnership. Subject to your approval today, we're ready to move forward and start doing things to meet our social equity goals that we outlined in the statement you approved. So thank you for that. As you've been hearing from the CDC, from our governor, you think things beginning to open up. We at SANDAG are going to start the opening of the office June 15th with full opening by September 7th. And given that we're dark in August, we're also think to open for a live board meeting in the first meeting in September. More details to follow. Hopefully things will continue to move the way it is, but we expect our office to be fully staffed by September 7th with a gradual start in June 15th. All the priority projects are moving forward. I just want to mention the Central Mobility Hub. we are, and I appreciate our partnership with our Navy friends. Mr. Dennis Kick was here today. I think him and I are meeting regularly to discuss progress. As you know, putting a central mobility hub on the Navor site is one of the alternatives. By June 4th, we should deliver a comprehensive report where the Navy and us will be discussing a path forward. So again, I want to thank Mr. Kick and his staff for their partnership. All the other priorities are moving forward as planned. And with that, Mayor Gloria, that concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Hassan. Ask the clerk if there are any public commenters on this particular item.
Vice Chair, we do have a hand raised, but there, I believe it's for a non-agenda public comment. If I could just take a second to confirm.
Of course.
Mike Bullock, did you want to speak on this item, or was this something not on the agenda? Mike, you're self-muted if you, oh, go ahead.
Yes, you're correct. I raised my hand to speak on non-agendized items.
Okay, great. We'll come back to you. And Nicole Burgess, did you want to speak on this item or non-agenda?
Hello, this is Paula Gandolfo, and I would like to speak. In fact, I have a question. Ask a question. Where the mobility hub, and the answer, Ms. Archer, was a path forward. What I'd like to know is this path forward to accomplish what? Are those going to be bike paths of the edges of the military properties throughout?
Nicole, I'm so sorry, but you're cutting in and out. Could we possibly come back to you during the public comment period later to ask your question?
Yes, I apologize. There's two folks from this iPad, so I just want to clarify that, and we'll make a break. Thank you so much. We'll comment later.
Okay, I'll make sure we call on you later in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you,
Vice Chair,
members.
that's all the hands raised. Thank you.
Thank you, clerk, and thank you, members of the public. We'll turn to members of the committee. Any comments or questions for our executive director this morning? I see no hands raised. That will move us to our consent agenda this morning. That brings us to the consent. Unless there are any questions or public comments on the consent agenda, I would welcome a motion on this item.
So moved, Terry Gasterland.
Second by Shu.
We have a motion by Del Mar, seconded by La Mesa. Correct, and well, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Thank you very much. For the City of Carlsbad, Mayor Hall.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Chula Vista, Mayor Salas.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Coronado, Mayor Bailey.
He's having some connection issues.
Okay, I'll come back to Mayor Bailey. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of Del Mar, Mayor Gasterland.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of El Cajon, Mayor Wells.
He's also having connection issues.
Okay, thank you. For the City of Encinitas, Councilmember Mosca.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Escondido, Mayor McNamara.
McNamara, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Imperial Beach, Mayor Dedina.
Dedina, yes. Imperial Beach, yes.
Thank you. For the City of La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of Lemon Grove, Councilmember Mendoza.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of National City, Mayor Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Thank you. For the City of Oceanside, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Rodriguez, yes. Mayor Bailey is just waiting for the clerk to let him in.
Thank you. I did promote him. I'll come back to him at the end. For the City of Poway, Mayor Voss.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Gloria.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of San Marcos, Mayor Jones.
Jones, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Santee, Mayor Minto.
Minto, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Solana Beach, Mayor Hebner.
Hebner, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Vista, Mayor Ritter.
Ritter, yes.
Thank you. And for the City of Coronado, Mayor Bailey.
Bailey, yes.
Thank you. And for the City of El Cajon, Mayor Wells. Mayor Wells, I believe you're self-muted at the moment. Mayor Wells, if you hit *9 on your, or I'm sorry, *6 on your phone, you should be able to unmute yourself. Mayor Wells, if you'd like to give me a call or provide your vote some other way, well, we can note it for the record afterward, I believe. So that does pass with those members present. Thank you, Vice Chair.
No, thank you, Francesca. And I appreciate your diligence, that of the board members and the public. You know, even a year into this is still difficult. And I appreciate everyone being patient, extending grace to one another as we navigate this, knowing that we're nearly done. So let's everybody hang in there. Thank you very much. That moves us to our chair's report. Under chair's report this week, we have a recommendation from our screening committee to approve the public members of our audit committee. This has been led by our colleague, La Mesa City Council Member Jack Hsu. Councilmember Hsu, would you please take the floor?
Thank you, Vice Chair Gloria, and good morning to all board members. On May 4th, I had the pleasure of meeting with 2 members of the SANDAG Audit Committee Selection Committee, and that's Un Park Lynch, Chief Financial Officer for North County Transit District, and Lauren Warren, Chief Deputy Treasurer for the County of San Diego. And I want to take a moment to thank Un and Lauren for their work. We had 2 of the top experienced auditors in this field in our region to help me serve on this committee. So I want to thank the both of them. The selection committee discussed the depth and diversity of technical expertise and professional experience of the applicants, their understanding of the role and responsibilities of the audit committee, their interest and commitment to establish an effective audit program to support the overall effectiveness of SANDAG. And I want to thank all 7 applicants who applied to serve on this committee. We ultimately selected applicants with the highest qualifications for the role. These individuals are Stuart Halpern, Robert Moonson, Agnes Wong Nicholson, and their applications are visible on the agenda's attachments or the additional parts of today's agenda. And I'm confident that the members selected by this screening committee will serve the audit committee and the public well. With that, I'll hand it back to you, Vice Mayor Gloria. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Council Member. Thank you, Council Member Hsu, and thank you to Un Park Lynch from NCTE, as well as Lauren Warner from the County of San Diego for volunteering your time to serve on this screening committee. Appreciate that very much. As you'll hear in the next item, it is critical that SANDAG continue to hold itself to the highest standards and that the audit committee plays a truly pivotal role in helping us to do precisely that. Just to be clear, pending board approval today, these appointments will be effective immediately. Francesca, I'd like to ask, is there any member of the public seeking to speak on this particular item?
No, Vice Chair, I don't see any hands from the public.
Very good. I'll bring it back to our board. Do we have any board member comments on this item? I see no hands raised. If there are none, do we have a motion on this item?
This is Terry Gasterland. I'll move that the Board of Directors approve the public members of the SANDAG Audit Policy Advisory Committee as nominated by the Public Members Screening Committee.
Thank you.
Second, Mosca.
Thank you for that extremely specific motion. We appreciate that clarity from Delmar. Thank you very much. So I heard a motion from Delmar, seconded by Encinitas. I'll call on the clerk to please call the vote.
Thank you very much. For the City of Carlsbad, Mayor Hall.
Carlsbad, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Chula Vista, Mayor Salas.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Coronado, Mayor Bailey.
Bailey, yes.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of Del Mar, Mayor Gasterlin.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of El Cajon, Mayor Wells. And Mayor Wells, would you like to provide your vote for the consent item as well?
Yes for both.
Thank you very much. For the City of Encinitas, Councilmember Mosca.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Escondido, Mayor McNamara.
McNamara, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Imperial Beach, Mayor Dedina.
Imperial Beach, yes.
Thank you. For the City of La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Lemon Grove, Councilmember Mendoza.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of National City, Mayor Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Thank you. For the City of Oceanside, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Rodriguez, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Poway, Mayor Voss.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Gloria.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of San Marcos, Mayor Jones.
Jones, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Santee, Mayor Minto.
Minto, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Solana Beach, Mayor Huebner.
Huebner, yes.
Thank you. And for the City of Vista, Mayor Ritter.
Ritter, yes.
Thank you very much. And that does pass unanimously.
Fantastic. Thank you again to our new public board members for their service and to all who applied for these appointments. I also want to thank our outgoing member, Paul Dostart, for his service to SANDAG. And thank you for your past years of service to this organization. We wish you all the best in your future public service endeavors. So that brings us, board, let me turn my agenda here. Brings us to item 11 on our reports. This is a proposed amendment to the TransNet ordinance related to administrative expenses. This will be familiar to members of the public and the board. We've discussed this issue a few times now, both at the executive committee and here at the board. Today, we are asked to take a final vote on this matter. And I understand that we have our TransNet ITalk chair, Michael Kinney, who is here to help introduce this item. Before turning the floor over to Chair Kinney, thank you very much, sir, for your service to this organization and the broader public. I know on behalf of Chair Blakespear, we certainly appreciate your service. Chair Kinney, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Mayor Gloria, SANDAG board members, thanks for the opportunity to speak. As the chair of the Independent Taxpayers Oversight Committee, or the ITalk, as we're known, I felt it was important to be here today on behalf of my ITalk committee members to voice our support for your approval of this item. ITalk members had two opportunities to hear from staff on this item, once at our regular scheduled meeting in March, and again at a special meeting specifically for this item later in the month. As your TransNet Oversight Committee, we felt we had to do a deep dive into this data, and we carefully reviewed it. The amendment as proposed complete and how it would impact TransNet programs. After conducting our review consistent with the TransNet requirements, the ITalk unanimously voted to support the increase of administrative expenses from 1% to 2%. We acknowledge that the proposed changes, proposed changes would ultimately benefit taxpayers, benefit the region at large, and help advance the TransNet programs. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. We thank you for those remarks and again for the important work that you and your committee does on behalf of the TransNet program. I know it was important to me that our ITalk committee supported this action. I think that's true for many of the board members from the previous times we've explored this matter. The community, our stakeholders, and the board has been calling for change at SANDAG for a long time now. I believe that this amendment, as proposed, provides a path forward to ensure the continued integrity of the TransNet program on behalf of the San Diego region. Now, before moving on to the reading of this item, I'd like to ask our General Counsel, Mr. Kirk, to provide us with some of the requirements to move forward with today's requested action. John, can you explain to the board?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. In terms of the procedures for moving forward with today's action, there's two general categories of procedural requirements. The first group of them has to do with the noticing of the proposed amendments, and the second has to do with the method in which the board acting as the Transportation Commission votes on them. First of all, in terms of the noticing, first of all, this is required to be published in a newspaper of general circulation at least 5 days prior to the adoption date. The summary of the proposed amendment was published in the San Diego Daily Transcript on April 16th. Secondly, in terms of notice, you have your regular Brown Act noticing at least 72 hours in advance of the meeting, and today's agenda was published or posted on May the 7th. Third, the proposed ordinance amendment is to be initially introduced before you have the meeting at which it is considered for adoption. Sometimes that's called a first reading. That has to happen at least 5 days in advance of the meeting when the proposed amendments will be voted on. And that introduction or first reading occurred on April the 23rd. And then finally, in terms of noticing, there's a requirement in your board policies that the full text of the ordinance, including the proposed amendment, be read. And that can happen either at the meeting where the amendment is introduced or at the meeting where the approval of the proposed amendment is voted on. This happens unless the full reading is waived by a unanimous vote of the board. And just to be clear, a vote to waive the full reading of the ordinance is in no way a vote as to whether the proposed amendment should or should not be adopted. That will be a separate vote that will happen at a different time. So those are all of your noticing requirements. Finally, in terms of voting on the substance of the proposed amendment, that is, whether the proposed amendment should or should not be adopted. For Section 16 of the TransNet Ordinance, the ordinance can be amended to further its purposes by a 2/3 vote of the commission, concurring consistent with the commission's standard voting mechanism. Here, when the ordinance talks about the commission, that recognizes the board's role as a San Diego Regional Transportation Commission per the San Diego Regional Transportation Commission Act. That's in the Public Utilities Code. And per that act, SANDAG's bylaws, rules, and regulations are mandated to be the rules for the proceedings and administration of the commission. So based upon that, SANDAG's standard voting mechanism is to be the commission's voting mechanism that will be used as you vote on whether to approve the proposed amendments to the TransNet ordinance. And as noted there, the required threshold is 2/3 of the commission, not only of those who are present, but of the entirety of the commission. So as applied, that would be require 13 tally votes or 66.7% of the weighted vote if the weighted vote is called for. If the proposed amendment is passed today, it would take effect 30 days after its passage today. That concludes the procedures that you would be following.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. So we'll do, let me try and set the stage. Staff is ready, board members, to read the ordinance. I'm told that it's expected to take upwards of 2 hours to read it in its entirety. Unless we can get unanimous approval to waive the full reading, we will conduct the reading of the ordinance. We will then hear staff's presentation on the substance of the amendment that has been proposed, and then open it up to the public for comment, and then board member comments, questions, and a vote. As Mr. Kirk just noted, we have the ability to waive the reading of the full ordinance. That, of course, does not signal support for the substance of the amendment, simply for the procedure, basically not enduring the 2-hour reading of the ordinance. It is the pleasure of this board. I serve at your pleasure, so we will move forward if any with the full reading of the ordinance, unless a board member unless we can get unanimous consent. So I will ask at this time from my board colleagues, would any board member present oppose waiving the full reading of the ordinance?
Yes.
Who was the yes?
Mayor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. So we do not have a unanimous consent to proceed. So I would ask staff to begin reading the ordinance. I would ask the board to buckle in.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Gloria, I have a quick question for council, actually.
Sure. I see both La Mesa and Del Mar seeking recognition. This is on the question of reading of the ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Shute, please proceed.
Thank you. In my training as a council member, when I first started, I was trained by some members of the League of California Cities, discouraging council members to have their cell phones on or to be texting during council meetings, and that there may be a violation of Brown Act showing that various members of the governing body may be communicating during a deliberation on something, which would be in violation of the Brown Act. So I wanted to ask Kirk if he had any feelings about that. I may have received texts from my family during meetings and stuff, and I'll respond to that, but I'm generally inclined, particularly on the controversial item, to turn my cell phones off. And secondly, just for everyone's information, because we're about to read this item, I presume that other colleagues on the board feel that this is very important that we hear the entire ordinance. So what is before us. So I'm going to leave my camera on for the entire period, listen intensely, take notes, and probably be ready for a test afterwards. This is out of respect for the process and those staff members who are reading, taking the time to read this item. So I'm going to leave my camera on, and I hope my other members on the board do the same by keeping their camera on and present the entire period. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Again, I'm hoping that these comments are relevant to the reading of the ordinance. Mayor Gasterlin, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you very much. I was hoping to make this comment prior to asking for who would oppose, and to appeal to each of my fellow board members. I myself, as a new council member, read the TransNet, the whole thing, with my eyes, and really got a lot out of it. And I very much would like to hear my fellow board members and their thinking on this. And our time is short here. Our time is valuable. And the TransNet ordinance is available for each of us to read. So I would want to appeal, and I would have appealed to my fellow board members that we waive the reading. And Mayor Hall, I hear you, but use the time to have a deeper discussion among us.
Thank you very much for those comments, Mayor. I see Mayor Dedina has his hand raised.
Yeah, I'm not as diplomatic as my colleague from Del Mar. I mean, I'll just call it out. Mayor Hall, I mean, it's cool you to spend 2 hours reading this, but I'm assuming that I would check into the City of Carlsbad council meeting and you make sure you guys waive every law that you pass or ordinance you pass, because I know in IB we don't. So, you want to waste our time here at SANDAG, but I'm assuming you're not a hypocrite, so you do that the same with the City of Carlsbad. But that's it. My diplomacy skills are ended with this ridiculous sort of parliamentary gamemanship that we don't apply to our own city. So if you're going to apply to your own city, apply it to SANDAG, but please don't waste our time, because it's a joke.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Chair, can staff please begin the reading? Let's get this moving forward.
Fine by me. I see no other hands raised. I just running the show here, council member. So maybe I'll ask one more time. We had a couple of pleas. Would any board members present oppose waiving the full reading? Do we still fail to have unanimous consent?
I haven't changed my mind.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you clarifying. Just to be sure, I heard Mayor Gasterlin's comment about wishing to have had made the plea before asking the question. So with that, we will proceed. Again, please stay present. I think Councilmember Shu's admonition for keeping your camera on is not a bad one. And I'd ask staff to proceed with the reading.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair Gloria and board members. Good morning, Ariana Zerneden, and also I will be joined by Don Batiste and Susan Huntington from staff, given the length of the reading. Amended and restated TransNet Extension Ordinance and Expenditure Plan, Commission Ordinance 04-01. The San Diego County Regional Transportation Commission ordains as follows. Section 1 title, this ordinance shall be known and may be cited as the San Diego Transportation Improvement Program Ordinance and Expenditure Plan, Commission Ordinance 04-01, hereinafter referred to as the ordinance. This ordinance provides for an extension of the retail transactions and use tax implemented by the initial San Diego Transportation Improvement Program ordinance. Commission Ordinance 87-1, Proposition A 1987, for a 40-year period commencing on April 1, 2008. The expenditure plan for this extension is set forth in sections 2 and 4 herein and is an expansion of the expenditure plan contained in Commission Ordinance 87-1. Section 2, Expenditure Plan Summary. This ordinance provides for the implementation of the San Diego Transportation Improvement Program, which will result in countywide transportation facility and service improvements for highways, rail transit services, new bus rapid transit services, local bus services, senior and disabled transportation services, local streets and roads, bicycle and pedestrian facilities, transportation-related community infrastructure to support smart growth development, and related environmental mitigation and enhancement projects. These needed improvements shall be funded by the continuation of the 1/2 of 1% transactions and use tax for a period of 40 years. The revenue shall be deposited in a special fund and used solely for the identified improvements. The specific projects and programs to be funded shall be further described in the document titled, quote, TransNet Extension Expenditure Plan Analysis, end quote, which is hereby incorporated by reference as if fully set forth herein. Any ancillary proceeds resulting from the implementation of the San Diego Transportation Improvement Program shall be used for transportation improvement projects in the San Diego region. A summary of the major projects and programs, including the major highway and transit improvements depicted on Figure 1, is provided in the following sections. All dollar references in this ordinance are in 2002 dollars. A, Congestion Relief Program Major Transportation Corridor Improvements. 1, Highway and Transit Capital Projects. Of the total funds available, an estimated $5,150 million will be used to match an estimated $4,795 million in federal, state, local, and other revenues to complete the projects listed below, parentheses, see Figure 1, end parentheses. The total costs include an estimated $500 million in financing costs related to bonds to be issued to accelerate the implementation of the major congestion relief projects identified in this section. The costs shown include the total estimated implementation costs of each project, net of habitat-related environmental mitigation costs for those transportation projects, which are funded under Section 2D. 3 of the highway projects listed below, parentheses, SR 67, SR 76, and a portion of SR 94, end parentheses, are described as including environmental enhancements as further described in the document titled, quote, Environmental Enhancement Criteria Mitigating Highway 67, 76, and 94 Expansion Impacts, end quote, which is hereby incorporated by reference as if fully set forth herein. Figure 1, TransNet Extension Major Highway and Transit Improvements. A, Highway Capital Improvements, parentheses, including managed lane, high occupancy vehicle, HOV lane additions, and general purpose lane additions, end parentheses, $6,760 million. 1, Interstate 5 South, add 2 HOV lanes from I-8 to SR 905, $722 million. 2, Interstate 5 Midcoast, add 2 HOV lanes from I-8 to I-805, including funding for environmental work and preliminary engineering for improvements at the I-5, I-8 interchange, $192 million. 3, Interstate 5 North, add 4 managed lanes from I-805 to Vandegrift Boulevard and Oceanside, including HOV to HOV connectors at the I-5, I-805 interchange and freeway connectors at the I-5 SR56 and I-5 SR78 interchanges, $1,234 million. 4, Interstate 8, add 2 general purpose lanes from 2nd Street to Los Coches Road, $29 million. 5, Interstate 15, add 4 managed lanes from SR 78 to Center City Parkway in Escondido and from SR 56 to SR 163, and add 2 HOV lanes from SR 163 to SR 94, including HOV to HOV connectors at the I-15 SR 78 and I-15 SR 94 interchanges, $882 million. 6, Interstate 805, add 4 managed lanes from I-5 to SR-54, including HOV to HOV connectors at the I-805 SR-52 interchange and improvements at the I-805 SR-54 interchange, $1,237 million. 7, SR-54, SR-125, add 2 lanes to provide a continuous facility with 3 general purpose lanes and 1 HOV lane in each direction, $139 million. 8, SR-56, add 1 general purpose lane in each direction from I-5 to I-15, $99 million. 9, SR-52, construct 4-lane freeway from SR-125 to SR-67. Add 2 general purpose lanes and 2 reversible managed lanes from I-15 to SR-125, and add 2 HOV lanes from I-805 to I-15, $476 million. 10, SR-67, expand to a continuous 4-lane facility, including environmental enhancements, from Mapleview Street to Dye Road, $218 million. 11, SR-75, SR-282, provide matching funds for construction purposes only for a tunnel from Glorieta Boulevard to Alameda Boulevard, $25 million. 12, SR-76, add 2 general purpose lanes from Melrose Drive to I-15, including environmental enhancements from Mission Road to I-15, $164 million. 13, SR-78, add 2 HOV lanes from I-5 to I-15, $495 million. 14, SR-94, SR-125, add 2 HOV lanes from I-5 to I-8, including freeway connectors at the SR-94, SR-125 interchange, $601 million. 15, SR-94, widen to 6 lanes from SR-125 to Avocado Boulevard and expand to a continuous 4-lane facility from Avocado Boulevard to Steel Canyon Road, including environmental enhancements from Hamishaw Road to Steel Canyon Road, $88 million. 16, border access improvements, provide matching construction funds for access improvements in the international border area, $25 million. 17, State Route 125 toll road, utilize funds to forgive a portion of the debt incurred by SANDAG pursuant to the promissory note dated December 16, 2011, which was used to finance a portion of the acquisition cost for the State Route 125 toll road franchise and related assets, $134 million. B, bus rapid transit, BRT, and rail transit capital improvements, $2,685 million. 1, BRT service from Escondido to downtown San Diego using the I-15 SR-94 managed HOV facilities, including new and improved stations and direct access ramps, $369 million. 2, BRT service from Escondido to Sorrento Mesa using the managed lane facility on I-15, $60 million. 3, BRT service from Otay Mesa to downtown San Diego using I-805 SR-94 managed HOV lane facilities, including new stations and direct access ramps, $497 million. 4, BRT service from San Isidro to Sorrento Mesa using the managed HOV lane facilities on I-805 I-15 SR-52, including station improvements, $70 million. 5, Blue Line light rail transit improvements, including station enhancements, signal upgrades, conversion to low floor vehicles, and grade separations in Chula Vista, $268 million. 6, Mid-Coast Transit Guideway Improvement Project using light rail technology to provide high-level transit service along the I-5 corridor from the Old Town area to the UC San Diego University Town Center area, would rely in part on federal funding. Absent federal funding, then bus technology may be considered for the high-level service plan for this corridor, $660 million. 7, Superloop providing high-quality connections to locations in the greater UC San Diego University Town Center area, including arterial improvements with bus priority treatment stations and vehicles, $30 million. 8, North I-5 Corridor Coaster BRT service providing high-quality north-south transit service improvements by upgrading the coaster commuter rail tracks and stations, providing BRT service in the El Camino Real corridor or a combination of the two, $376 million. 9, Orange Line light rail transit improvements, including station enhancements, signal upgrades, and conversion to low floor vehicles, $69 million. 10, SR-78 Corridor Sprinter BRT service, providing high quality east-west transit service improvements by completing the initial Sprinter rail project and using the remaining funds for upgrading and extending the Sprinter rail line, providing BRT service along the Palomar Airport Road corridor or a combination of the two $197 million. 11, BRT service from San Diego State University to downtown San Diego along the El Cajon Boulevard Park Boulevard corridor with arterial improvements with bus priority treatment stations and vehicles, $89 million. 2, operating support for the BRT and rail transit capital improvements. Of the total funds available, an estimated $1,100 million will be used to operate and maintain the services described under Section 2A1B. 3, environmental mitigation. An estimated $600 million, including $450 million for direct mitigation costs and $150 million for economic benefit, will be used to fund the habitat-related mitigation costs of the major highway and transit projects identified in the Regional Transportation Plan as part of the environmental mitigation program described in Section 2D. B, congestion relief program, transit system service improvements and related programs. An estimated $2,240 million will be used to provide ongoing support for the reduced price monthly transit programs for seniors, persons with disabilities, and students, and for the continuation and expansion of rail, express bus, local bus, community shuttles, and dial-a-ride services, including specialized services for seniors and persons with disabilities and related capital improvements. Congestion relief program, local system improvements and related programs. An estimated total of $4,480 million will be allocated to local programs in the following 3 categories. 1, local street and road program. An estimated $3,950 million will be allocated on a fair and equitable basis using the formula specified in Section 41 to each city and the County of San Diego, parentheses hereinafter referred to as local agencies, end parentheses, to supplement other revenues available for local street and road improvements. In developing the biennial list of projects to be funded with these revenues as required under Section 5A, local agencies shall give high priority in the use of these funds to improvements to regional arterials, grade separation projects, and related facilities contributing to congestion relief. At least 70% of the revenues provided for local street and road purposes should be used to fund direct expenditures for construction of new or expanded facilities, major rehabilitation and reconstruction of roadways, traffic signal coordination and related traffic operations improvements, transportation-related community infrastructure improvements to support smart growth development, capital improvements needed to facilitate transit services and facilities, and operating support for local shuttle and circulator routes and other services. No more than 30% of these funds should be used for local street and road maintenance purposes. A local agency desiring to spend more than 30% of its annual revenues on local street and road maintenance related projects shall provide justification to the Commission as part of its biennial project list submittal. The Commission shall review each local agency's biennial project list submittal and make a finding of consistency with the provisions of this ordinance and with the Regional Transportation Plan prior to approving the local agency's project list for funding. The Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee shall also review the proposed project lists and make recommendations to the Commission. 2, environmental mitigation. An estimated $250 million, including $200 million for direct mitigation costs and $50 million for economic benefit, will be used to fund the habitat-related mitigation costs of local transportation projects consistent with the Regional Transportation Plan as part of the environmental mitigation program described in Section 2D. 3, Smart Growth Incentive Program. An estimated $280 million will be allocated to the Smart Growth Incentive Program to provide funding for a broad array of transportation-related infrastructure improvements that will assist local agencies in better integrating transportation and land use, such as enhancements to streets and public places, funding of infrastructure needed to support development in smart growth opportunity areas consistent with the Regional Comprehensive Plan, and community planning efforts related to smart growth and improved land use transportation coordination. These funds shall be allocated on a regional competitive grant basis. It is intended that these funds be used to match federal, state, local, and private funding to maximize the number of improvements to be implemented. The Commission shall establish specific project eligibility criteria for this program.
D, transportation project environmental mitigation. An estimated $850 million will be used to fund habitat-related environmental mitigation activities required in the implementation of the major highway, transit, and regional arterial and local street and road improvements identified in the Regional Transportation Plan. Of this total, an estimated $250 million is related to mitigation requirements for local transportation projects, and an estimated $600 million is related to mitigation requirements for the major highway and transit projects identified in the Regional Transportation Plan. The intent is to establish a program to provide for large-scale acquisition and management of critical habitat areas and to create a reliable approach for funding required mitigation for future transportation improvements, thereby reducing future cost and accelerating project delivery. This approach would be implemented by obtaining coverage for transportation projects through existing and proposed multiple species conservation plans. If this approach cannot be fully implemented, then these funds shall be used for environmental mitigation purposes on a project-by-project basis. Additional detail regarding this program is described in the documents titled, quote, TransNet Extension Environmental Mitigation Program Principles, end quote, and quote, Environmental Enhancement Criteria Mitigating Highway 67, 76, and 94 Expansion Impacts, end quote, which are hereby incorporated by reference as if fully set forth herein. E, Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Neighborhood Safety Program. A total of 2% of the total annual revenues available, an estimated $280 million, end parentheses, will be allocated to the Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Neighborhood Safety Program to provide funding for bikeway facilities and connectivity improvements, pedestrian and walkable community projects, bicycle and pedestrian safety projects and programs, and traffic calming projects. These funds shall be allocated on a regional competitive grant basis. It is intended that these funds be used to match federal, state, local, and private funding to maximize the number of improvements to be implemented. The Commission shall establish specific project eligibility criteria for this program. F, Administration and Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee. Up to 2%, reflecting a proposed amendment from the originally stated 1% of the total annual revenues available, will be used for administrative expenses, and up to $250,000 per year will be used for the operation of an independent taxpayer oversight committee. Section 3, imposition of transactions and use tax. In addition to any other taxes authorized by law, there is hereby imposed in the incorporated and unincorporated territory of the County of San Diego, in accordance with the provisions of Part 1.6, parentheses, commencing with Section 7251, end parentheses, of Division 2 of the Revenue and Taxation Code and Division 12.7 of the Public Utilities Code, commencing with Code Section 132000, an extension of the existing transactions and use tax at the rate of 0.5%, commencing April 1, 2008, for a period of 40 years, in addition to any existing or future authorized state or local transactions and use tax. If during this time additional state or federal funds become available, which would fund the projects and services contained in the Regional Transportation Plan, then the tax may be reduced by action of the Commission. Section 4, expenditure plan purposes. The revenues received by the Commission from the existing measure, as extended by this measure, after deduction of required Board of Equalization costs for performing the functions specified in Section 132304B of the Public Utilities Code, shall be used to improve transportation facilities and services countywide as set forth in the expenditure plan and in a manner consistent with the long-range regional transportation plan and the short-range multi-year regional transportation improvement program. And for the administration of the San Diego County Regional Transportation Commission Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, commencing with Public Utilities Code Section 132000. Commencing July 1, 2008, after the deduction of administrative expenses, Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee expenses, and funding for the Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Neighborhood Safety Program as described in Sections 2E, 2F, 11, and 12. The remaining annual revenues shall be allocated as follows. A, 42 4/10% for the major highway and transit congestion relief projects specified in Section 2A1, including 4 4/10% for the habitat-related mitigation cost of the major highway and transit projects as described in Section 2A3 to be used to fund a portion of the environmental mitigation program described in Section 2D. B, 8 1/10% for operation of the specific transit congestion relief projects as described in Section 2A2. This funding is for the operation of new or expanded services only and is not available for the operation of services in existence prior to the effective date of this ordinance. C, 16 1/2% for the transit programs described in Section 2B. The revenues made available annually for transit purposes shall be allocated and expended pursuant to the following distribution formula and priorities. 1, 2 1/2% of the funds made available under Section 4C shall be used to support improved transportation services for seniors and disabled persons. These funds shall be used to support specialized paratransit services required by the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. 2, 3 1/4% of the funds made available under Section 4C shall be used to support a competitive grant program for nonprofit organizations and local agencies. The fund shall be used to provide specialized transportation services for seniors, focusing on innovative and cost-effective approaches to providing improved senior transportation, including but not limited to shared group services, special shuttle services using volunteer forces, and brokerage of multi-jurisdictional transportation services. 3, from the remaining revenues, there shall be expended such sums as necessary to guarantee in the North San Diego County Transit Development Board and Metropolitan Transit Development Board areas of jurisdiction for the duration of the measure. 1, a monthly regional transit pass for senior, parentheses 65 years or older, end parentheses, and disabled riders priced at not more than 50% of the cost of the regular regional monthly transit pass. And 2, a monthly regional youth transit pass for students, parentheses 18 years or under, end parentheses, priced at not more than 50% of the cost of the regular regional monthly transit pass. 4, remaining revenues shall be allocated for transit service improvements, including operations and supporting capital improvements. The revenues shall be allocated through the annual transit operator budget process, and the improvements to be funded shall be consistent with the short-range transit plan. 5, to maintain eligibility for the receipt of funds under Section 4C, a transit operator must limit the increase in its total operating cost per revenue vehicle hour for bus service or the increase in its total operating cost per revenue vehicle mile for rail services from one fiscal year to the next to no more than the increase in the consumer price index for San Diego County over the same period. If the requirement is not achieved, the operator may not receive any additional funding under Section 4C in the following year above the amount received in the previous fiscal year, adjusted for any increase in the consumer price index for San Diego County. If there were unusual circumstances in a given fiscal year, the operator may request the approval of the commission to calculate the requirement as an average over the previous 3 fiscal years. The operator may also request the approval of the commission to exclude from the calculation certain cost increases that were due to external events entirely beyond the operator's control, including but not limited to increases in the cost for fuel, insurance premiums, or new state or federal mandates. D, 33% for the local programs described in Section 2C in the following 3 categories. 1, 29 1/10% for the local street and road program described in Section 2C1. The revenues available for the local street and road program shall be allocated and expended pursuant to the following distribution formula. A, each local agency shall receive an annual base sum of $50,000. B, the remaining revenues after the base sum distribution shall be distributed to each local agency on the following basis. 1, 2/3 based on total population using the most recent Department of Finance population estimates. 2, 1/3 based on maintained street and road mileage. C, For the purposes of section 4D1A and B, any new incorporations or annexations which take place after July 1 of any fiscal year shall be incorporated into the formula beginning with the subsequent fiscal year. The San Diego Association of Governments population estimates of such new incorporations or annexations shall be used until such time as Department of Finance population estimates are available. 2, 1 8/10% for the habitat-related mitigation cost of local transportation projects described in section 2C2 to be used to fund a portion of the environmental mitigation program described in section 2D. 3, 2 1/10% for the smart growth incentive program described in section 2C3. E, general provisions. 1, in implementing the projects funded under section 4A, priority shall be given to projects included in the expenditure plan for Proposition A as passed by the voters in 1987 that remain uncompleted, such as the eastern ends of the state SR 52 and SR 76 highway improvement projects and the Mid-Coast Light Rail Transit project. The commission shall ensure that sufficient funding or bonding capacity remain available to implement such projects as expeditiously as possible once the environmental clearance for these projects is obtained and needed state and federal matching funds are committed. 2, once any state highway facility or usable portion thereof is constructed to at least minimum acceptable state standards, the state shall be responsible for the maintenance and operation thereof. 3, all new projects or major reconstruction projects funded by revenues provided under this ordinance shall accommodate travel by pedestrians and bicyclists, except where pedestrians and bicyclists are prohibited by law from using a given facility, or where the cost of including bikeways and walkways would be excessively disproportionate to the need or probable use. Such facilities for pedestrian and bicycle use shall be designated to the best currently available standards and guidelines. 4, all state highway improvements to be funded with revenues as provided in this measure, including project development and overall project management, shall be a joint responsibility of Caltrans and the Commission. All major project approval actions, including the project concept, the project location, and any subsequent change in project scope, shall be jointly agreed upon by Caltrans and the Commission, and where appropriate by the Federal Highway Administration and/or the California Transportation Commission. Section 5, expenditure plan procedures. A, each local agency shall biennially develop a 5-year list of projects to be funded with revenues made available for local street and road improvements under section 4D. A local public hearing on the proposed list of projects shall be held by each local agency prior to submitting its project list to the Commission for approval pursuant to section 6. B, all projects to be funded with revenues made available under section 4 must be consistent with the Regional Transportation Plan, RTP. Project priorities or phasing shall also be consistent with the RTP. The expenditure plan shall be reviewed for consistency with RTP following each major update of the RTP as required by state or federal law. The expenditure plan shall be amended as necessary to maintain consistency with the Regional Transportation Plan. If funds become available in excess of the amount allocated in the expenditure plan, additional projects shall be added to the expenditure plan consistent with the priorities in the Regional Transportation Plan. Any amendments to the expenditure plan shall be made in accordance with procedures for amending this ordinance as provided for in section 16. C, in the allocation of all revenues made available under section 4, the Commission shall make every effort to maximize state and federal transportation funding to the region. The Commission may amend the expenditure plan in accordance with section 16 as needed to maximize the transportation funding to the San Diego region. Section 6, project programming approval. The Commission shall biennially approve a 5-year project list and a biennial program of projects to be funded during the succeeding 2 fiscal years with the revenues made available under section 4 herein. The program of projects will be prepared as part of the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, RTIP or RTIP process, as required by state and federal law. A public hearing will be held prior to approval of the program of projects. The commission may amend the program of projects as necessary in accordance with the RTIP amendment procedures. Projects shall not be funded with the revenues made available under Section 4 unless the projects are in the approved program of projects. Section 7, cooperative fund agreements. Except as provided for herein, the distribution of funds as set forth in Section 4 shall be met over the duration of the measure. To maximize the effective use of funds, revenues may be transferred or exchanged under the following circumstances. A, the commission or agencies receiving funds by annual or multi-year agreement may exchange or loan funds provided that the percentage of funds allocated for each purpose as provided in Section 4 is maintained over the duration of the measure and reviewed as part of each 10-year comprehensive program review as described in Section 17. All proposed exchanges, including agreements between agencies to exchange or loan funds, must include detailed fund repayment provisions, including appropriate interest earnings, such as the commission suffers no loss of funds as a result of the exchange or loan. All exchanges must be approved by the commission and shall be consistent with any and all rules approved by the commission relating thereto. B, the commission may exchange revenues for federal, state, or other local funds allocated or granted to any public agency within or outside the area of jurisdiction of the commission to maximize effectiveness in the use of revenues. Such federal, state, or local funds shall be distributed in the same manner as the revenues from the measure. Section 8, maintenance of effort. It is the intent of the legislature as stated in the act and the commission that revenues provided from this measure be used to augment, not supplant, existing local revenues being used for the purposes set forth in Section 4 herein. Each local agency receiving revenues pursuant to Section 4D shall annually maintain as a minimum the same level of local discretionary funds expended for local street and road purposes on average over the last 3 fiscal years completed prior to the operative date of this ordinance. Fiscal years 2000-01, 2001-02, 2002-03, as was reported in the State Controller's Annual Report for Financial Transactions for Streets and Roads and as verified by an independent auditor. The maintenance of effort level as determined through this process shall be subject to adjustment every 3 years based on the construction cost index developed by Caltrans. Any increase in the maintenance of effort level based on this adjustment shall not exceed the growth rate in the local jurisdiction's general fund revenues over the same time period. The commission shall not allocate any revenues pursuant to Section 4D to any eligible local agency in any fiscal year until that local agency has certified to the commission that it will include in its budget for that fiscal year an amount of local discretionary funding for streets and roads purposes at least equal to the minimum maintenance of effort requirement. An annual independent audit shall be conducted to verify that the maintenance of effort requirement for each agency was met. Any local agency which does not meet its maintenance of effort requirement in any year shall have its funding under Section 4D1 reduced in the following year by the amount by which the agency did not meet its required maintenance of effort level. In the event that special circumstances prevent a local agency from meeting its maintenance of effort requirement, the local agency may request up to 3 additional fiscal years to fulfill its requirement. Such a request must be approved by the commission. The Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee shall also review such requests and make recommendations to the commission. Any local street and road revenues not allocated pursuant to the maintenance of effort requirement shall be redistributed to the remaining eligible agencies according to the formula described in Section 4D1. The maintenance of effort requirement also shall apply to any local agency discretionary funds being used for other purposes specified under Section 4. In addition, revenues provided from this ordinance shall not be used to replace other private developer funding that has been or will be committed for any project.
Section 9, Regional Transportation Congestion Improvement Program, RTCIP. A, New Development Exactions. Starting on July 1st, 2008, each local agency in the San Diego region shall contribute $2,000 in exactions from the private sector for each newly constructed residential housing unit in that jurisdiction to the RTCIP. These exactions shall ensure future development contributes its proportional share of the funding needed to pay for the regional arterial system and related regional transportation facility improvements as defined in San Diego Association of Governments, SANDAG's most recent adopted Regional Transportation Plan. New residential housing units constructed for extremely low, very low, low, and moderate income households as defined in California Health and Safety Code sections 50105, 50106, 50079.5, and 50093 will be exempted from the $2,000 per unit contribution requirement. The amount of contribution shall be increased annually in an amount not to exceed the percentage increase set forth in the Engineering Construction Cost Index published by the Engineering News Record or similar cost of construction index. Each local agency shall establish an impact fee or other revenue funding program by which it collects and funds its contribution to the RTCIP. Each local agency shall be responsible for establishing a procedure for providing its monetary contribution to the RTCIP. The RTCIP revenue will be used to construct improvements on the regional arterial system, such as new or widened arterials, traffic signal coordination, and other traffic improvements, freeway interchange and related freeway improvements, railroad grade separations, and improvements required for regional express bus and rail transit. This action is predicated on the desire to establish a uniform mitigation program that will mitigate the regional transportation impacts of new development on the arterial system. While the RTCIP cannot and should not fund all necessary regional transportation network components and improvements, the RTCIP will establish a new revenue source that ensures future development will contribute its pro rata share towards addressing the impacts of new growth on the regional transportation infrastructure. B, oversight, audit, and funding allocations. The Regional Transportation Congestion Improvement Program, RTCIP, shall be overseen by SANDAG and implemented by each local agency, with the objective of developing a consolidated mitigation program for the San Diego region as a funding source for the regional arterial system. The RTCIP and each local agency's funding program shall be subject to an annual review and audit to be carried out by the SANDAG and the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee as defined in Section 11 of this ordinance. Any local agency that does not provide its full monetary contribution required by Section 9A in a given fiscal year will not be eligible to receive funding for local streets and roads under Section 4D1 of the TransNet Ordinance for the immediately following fiscal year. Any funding not allocated under 4D1 as a result of this requirement shall be reallocated to the remaining local agencies that are in compliance with this section. C, implementation of the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, RTCIP. Provisions for the implementation of the RTCIP are described in the document titled TransNet Extension Regional Transportation Congestion Improvement Program, which is hereby incorporated by reference as if fully set forth herein. Section 10, Bonding Authority. Upon voter approval of the ballot proposition to approve the extension of the tax and the issuance of bonds payable from the proceeds of the tax, bonds may be issued by the Commission pursuant to Division 12.7 of the Public Utilities Code. at any time and from time to time payable from the proceeds of the existing tax and its extension and secured by a pledge of revenues from the proceeds of the tax in order to finance and refinance improvements authorized by Ordinance 87.1 and this ordinance. The Commission, in allocating the annual revenues from the measure, shall meet all debt service requirements prior to allocating funds for other projects. Section 11, Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee. An Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee, ITOC, shall be established to provide an enhanced level of accountability for expenditure made under the expenditure plan. The ITOC will help to ensure that all voter mandates are carried out as required and will develop recommendations for improvements to the financial integrity and performance of the program. The roles and responsibilities of the ITOC, the selection process for ITOC members, and related administrative procedures shall be carried out in substantially the same manner as further described in the document titled Statement of Understanding regarding the implementation of the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee for the TransNet program, which is hereby incorporated by reference as if fully set forth herein. Up to $250,000 per year with adjustments for inflation based on the Consumer Price Index for San Diego County may be expended for activities related to the ITOC. Section 12, Administrative Expenses. Revenues may be expended by the Commission for staff salaries, wages, benefits, and overhead for those services, including contractual services necessary to administer the Act. However, in no case shall such expenditures exceed 2%, reflecting a proposed amendment from the originally stated 1% of the annual revenues provided by the measure. Any funds not utilized in a given fiscal year shall remain available for expenditure in subsequent fiscal years. Cost of performing or contracting for project-related work shall be paid from the revenues allocated to the appropriate purpose as set forth in Section 4 herein. An annual independent audit shall be conducted through the Independent Taxpayers Oversight Committee to assure that the revenues expended by the Commission under this section are necessary and reasonable in carrying out its responsibilities under the Act. Section 13. Establishment of separate accounts. Each agency receiving funds pursuant to Section 4 shall have its funds deposited in a separate transportation improvement account. Interest earned on funds allocated pursuant to this ordinance shall be expended only for those purposes for which the funds were allocated. Section 14, Implementing Ordinances. Upon approval of this measure by the voters, the Commission shall, in addition to the local rules required to be provided pursuant to this ordinance, adopt implementing ordinances, rules, and policies, and take such other actions as may be necessary and appropriate to carry out its responsibilities. Section 15, Effective and Operative Dates. This ordinance shall be effective on November 3rd, 2004, if one of the following events occurs. 1, 2/3 of the electors voting on the ballot proposition approving the ordinance vote to approve the ballot proposition on November 2nd, 2004. Or 2, a law is passed on or before November 2nd, 2004 that lowers the voter approval threshold applicable to this ordinance, and the number of electors voting in favor of this ordinance meets that threshold. The extension of the tax authorized by Section 3 of this ordinance shall be operative on April 1st, 2008. Bonds payable from the proceeds of the tax may be issued at any time prior to, on, or after April 1st, 2008. The provisions of Section 4 of this ordinance relating to the allocation of revenues shall be operative on July 1st, 2008. Section 16, Amendments. With the exceptions of Sections 2D, 3, 4E1, 8, 9, and 11, which require a vote of the electors of the County of San Diego to amend, this ordinance may be amended to further its purposes by ordinance, passed by roll call vote entered in the minutes, with 2/3 of the commission concurring, consistent with the commission's standard voting mechanism. Separate documents incorporated by reference in the ordinance in sections 2, 9, and 11 also may be amended with a 2/3 vote of the commission. Section 17, 10-year comprehensive program review. The commission shall conduct a comprehensive review of all projects and programs implemented under the expenditure plan to evaluate the performance of the overall program over the previous 10 years and to make revisions to the expenditure plan to improve its performance over the subsequent 10 years. Such comprehensive program reviews shall be conducted in fiscal years 2019, 2029, and 2039. Revisions to the ordinance and expenditure plan required as a result of the 10-year review shall be subject to the amendment process in Section 16. Section 18, designation of facilities. Each project or program in excess of $250,000 funded in whole or in part by revenues from this ordinance shall be clearly designated during its construction or implementation as being provided by revenues from this ordinance. Section 19, severability. If any section, subsection, part, clause, or phrase of this ordinance is for any reason held unenforceable or unconstitutional by a court of competent jurisdiction, that holding shall not affect the validity or enforceability of the remaining funds or provisions of this ordinance. And the commission declares that it would have passed each part of this ordinance irrespective of the validity of any other part. Notwithstanding the foregoing, if any part, clause, or phrase of Section 9A of the ordinance is for any reason held unenforceable or unconstitutional, the remaining portions of Section 9 shall be deemed invalid. Section 20, annual appropriations limit. Article XIIB of the California Constitution requires the establishment of an annual appropriations limit for certain governmental entities. The maximum annual appropriations limit for the commission shall be established as $950 million for the 2004-05 fiscal year. The appropriations limit shall be subject to adjustment as provided by law. All expenditures of the transactions and use tax revenues imposed in Section 3 are subject to the appropriations limit of the commission. Section 21, definitions. A, commission means the San Diego County Regional Transportation Commission created by Chapter 1576 of the Statutes of 1985. Parentheses, Division 12.7 of the Public Utilities Code, commencing with Section 132000, end parentheses. B, transit, means all purposes necessary and convenient to the construction, operation, and maintenance of public transportation services and facilities, including the acquisition of vehicles and right-of-way. Public transportation services include, but are not limited to, local and express bus, bus rapid transit, parentheses, BRT, end parentheses, paratransit, parentheses, dial a ride, end parentheses, fixed guideway, light rail, parentheses, trolley, end parentheses, and commuter rail services and facilities. C, local streets and roads, means all purposes necessary and convenient for the purposes as described in Section 2CI. D, highways, means all purposes necessary and convenient to the design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction of highway facilities, including all state highway routes and any other facilities so designated in the expenditure plan. E, bicycle and pedestrian facilities, means all purposes necessary and convenient to the design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction of facilities intended for use by bicycles and pedestrians. Bicycle and pedestrian facilities shall also mean facilities and programs that help to encourage walking and the use of bicycles, such as secure bicycle parking facilities and bicycle and pedestrian promotion and safety education programs. F, bonds, means indebtedness and securities of any kind or class, including but not limited to bonds, notes, bond anticipation notes, and commercial paper. G, expenditure plan, means the expenditure plan required by section 132302 of the Public Utilities Code to be included in the transactions and use tax ordinance to be approved by the commission. The expenditure plan includes the allocation of revenues for each authorized purpose. H, regional transportation plan, means the long-range transportation plan for the San Diego region required by section 65080 of the Government Code to be prepared by the San Diego Association of Governments as the designated regional transportation planning agency. I, Regional Transportation Improvement Program, means the 5-year programming document required by section 65080 of the Government Code to be prepared by the San Diego Association of Governments as the designated regional transportation planning agency. J, Transit Operator, means any district included transit district municipal operator included municipal operator or transit development board as defined in Public Utilities Code section 99210. K, Regional Comprehensive Plan, means the document integrating land use, transportation systems, infrastructure needs, and public investment strategies within a regional framework to be prepared by the San Diego Association of Governments as required by section 132360 of the Public Utilities Code. Section 22, effect on Commission Ordinance 87-1. This ordinance is intended to extend and expand the provisions of Commission Ordinance 87-1 and shall not be read to supersede Commission Ordinance 87-1. If this ordinance is not approved by the voters of San Diego County, the provisions of Commission Ordinance 87-1 and all powers, duties, and actions taken thereunder shall remain in full force and effect. Passed and adopted by the San Diego County Regional Transportation Commission the 28th day of May 2004. Amended December 2006, May 2008, July 2009, November 2009, March 2021, March 2017, and February 2019.
Thank you very much. I believe that brings us to the end. I will thank Ariana, Don, and Susan for their efficient reading, exceeding our expectations on how long that would take. Hopefully you all are still with us. Now that that has been dispensed with, let's get to the staff presentation. Ray, I believe you're on deck to make the presentation.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Vice Chair Gloria and members of the board. Really appreciate the opportunity for the time today. You know, back when the board hired Hassan in late 2018, it was really to transform SANDAG. And I think many of you remember that this was an organization that was in trouble. I mean, there were years of underinvestment showing, and you saw the effects on our work and our reputation. And I think you saw that the agency was running too lean in too many areas for too many years. And it was you, our board, and then the members and the constituents that you serve in our community that asked SANDAG to improve. And I think the bottom line was you were looking for us to strengthen our programs and our practices so that we'd be a better agency and really help us to better serve the changing needs of the San Diego region. And it was back in your March 26th meeting that Andre, myself, and a number of the colleagues on the executive team presented to you for your consideration the draft fiscal year 22 budget. And in that conversation, we really talked about the need for a sustainable investment in this transformation. And you might recall that during that presentation, we recapped the journey that we began more than 2.5 years ago. And that journey was really primarily focused on one thing, and that's to become a more effective organization. We talked about the comprehensive organizational assessment that was undertook as soon as Hassan arrived. And that really formed the foundation for the development of our strategic plan, which now is our roadmap for this transformation. And I'm here to tell you, and I know Andre would echo the same sentiments, that the transformation's underway. And I think we've heard from board members, we've heard from members of the community, and you've noticed that SANDAG indeed has changed. Now, our mandate is to continue to change, to evolve and to adapt, to be more agile, to be more responsive, and also to be willing to have difficult conversations. Now, over the years, the programs that we've been conducting on behalf of the communities of San Diego have been audited by a number of our funding agencies. They've been audited by project partners, as well as our independent auditors. And almost all of these audits and reviews and assessments include some areas for improvements and recommendations, and they really do call for SANDAG to change. And in fact, during the reading of the TransNet Ordinance, there was a reference to the 10-year TransNet Comprehensive Review. And even that review, most recently completed in 2018, made a number of recommendations for improvements, as well as for the use of these region-wide allocations to fund the changes that are proposed in this amendment that's before you this morning. Now, when ITALC Chair Kenny mentioned that he and the members of the ITALC considered this, they had a number of lengthy conversations, so much so that they called us back for a second deeper dive into the whole proposal. And they really urged us to be serious about the changes that we're making. And their vote unanimously to support these changes, I think, is the endorsement that we were all very pleased to receive. And that really talks about taking the funds that are available now and making the administration fee go from 1% to 2%. And then again, back on your March 26th meeting, we discussed all the benefits that were associated with this investment, because it really is an investment in the organization to help us serve you better. So just to highlight some of those, I'd like to ask Andre to kind of step you through what those benefits would be. Andre?
Thank you, Ray. So the proposed amendment will provide SANDAG with a sustainable source of funding necessary to support ongoing and future transit activities. The funding is critical if we are to address recurring areas of concern identified in reviews and audits and in our organizational assessment as opportunities for improvement. The next slide. So the investment in the region will provide several benefits. To recap, they will include enhanced performance monitoring, analysis, and reporting. Making use of data requires data science skills to acquire, process, analyze, and interpret the data. Just as important is the quality assurance, quality control, and data governance to ensure that accurate interpretations are made, that transparency is ensured, and that mistakes are not made. Putting big data and analytics to use will help us propel beyond mere compliance reporting and will help us to drive more openness and transparency we seek to make the data more accessible through an open data portal. Next is the member agency services and communications. Based on feedback from board members and the results of the strategic planning process, staff is implementing an enhanced level of member services to make sure that you, our board members, have timely and relevant information to make informed decisions on behalf of the region. This includes offering to brief board members in advance of every meeting, focusing on better ways to share complex information through our reports and presentations, and improve our response to your inquiries. Through these efforts, we help to ensure the oversight and integrity of the transit program and build a better partnership with our board in support of the agency's initiatives, a primary one being the attraction of federal and state funding to augment the transit program. Next is the support for funds management and pursue new funding opportunities. We need to provide support to the region and local jurisdiction with competent financial management of transit program funds to support continued innovative financing and refinancing activities. As funding gets scarcer, we need additional resources to go out and find funds to continue to leverage our program. And the support for audits and OIPA. In addition to the resources needed by the Office of the Independent Auditor, Management also needs staff resources to participate in the audits, and more importantly, resources to respond to the audit findings and to implement the recommendations. Mary Kay acknowledged these needs in her remarks to you in March. Without this investment, audit findings will pile up and risks will increase. And the commitment to equity. SANDAG is bringing a social lens to all policies, programs, projects, and services, including the transit program of projects. There's increased demand for resources and expertise to manage and support efforts related to Title VI, environmental justice, Americans with disabilities, equal employment opportunity, to bring greater understanding to policymakers and managers. These are just some of the highlights of the benefits that will result from the Transit Ordinance Amendment we've discussed in recent months. I'll now turn it back to Ray to discuss how this ordinance amendment will assist in bringing the strategic plan that we've been working on to life. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. Next slide, please. So back on your March 26th meeting, when we presented the fiscal year 22 budget, we introduced our new strategic planning framework. And this infinity loop that you see before you really tries to connect everything that SANDAG does with the why we exist and why the work that we're doing is so important. So on the next slide, I wanted to just highlight for you a little bit more about that why our work is just so critical for the region. And it's evident through the vision that all of you adopted, and that is to pursue a brighter future for all. And our mission is we are the regional agency that connects people, places, and innovative ideas by implementing solutions with our unique and diverse communities. Next slide. The framework now incorporates the expectations for how we do our work, and it also lays out a series of roadmaps that describe what it is we do and what we're going to be focusing on as we deliver the important programs, the critical projects, as well as all the supporting services, while at the same time, taking the time to go through that adaptation that I talked about, that transformation, to really meet the growing needs of our region. Next slide. During that presentation, Andre, myself, and the colleagues highlighted this conversation around the what it is we're working toward. And that can be embodied through, we call 5 initiatives. And these are really complex transformational efforts. And I'll just go through them very briefly for you, but beginning with advancing equity and inclusion. The second is enhancing the organization's culture. Third, it's improving our digital capabilities. Related to that is to become a data-driven organization. And finally, to pursue funding sources to really bring the regional vision to life. So the development of the strategic plan was really a major milestone on this journey of transformation that did begin more than 2.5 years ago. And our success is going to be measured by you as we implement this plan over time. Now, the ordinance amendment that we're talking about this morning provides the important resources. These are really critical to help bring the strategic plan to life. And I say critical because we are at a critical point. If we're going to maintain and sustain the forward progress that we've developed thus far, to really stay the course with this transformation and to usher SANDAG into the realm of those rarefied organizations that are world-class, well, that's really what's before you today. These investments are needed at this point. We've got to optimize our technology, the data, the modeling resources that enable us to do a better job in monitoring and reporting our performance, which is fundamentally what we know you're interested in. We've got to provide support to you as our member agencies and our board. We've got to provide comprehensive financial management as well as the funds to bring the plan to life. And as well as what Andre talked about is to be able to fund that important work of the independent performance auditor, as well as advancing the implementation of our commitment to equity. So I think you'll see that we've got a very ambitious work program before us. And we really intend to continue this transformation. But this TransNet Ordinance Amendment is really the key to unlock the resources to bring this to life. If we're going to advance our work for the region of the San Diego people, it's really this step that's going to be one of many we're going to be asking you to take. So with all that, Mr. Vice Chair, Andre, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Ray, and thank you, Andre, for the presentation as a helpful reminder of what we're considering this morning. I'll turn to the clerk and ask if we have any public comments on this item.
Yes, I do see one hand from the public. Mike Bullock. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Welcome, Mr. Bullock.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you very much. That was quite educational. I had looked at that from time to time over the years, but having it read now, knowing what we know, was very impressive. And I want to thank the 7 or 8 SANDAG board members that kept their video on. And I think we need to understand that 1% to 2%, that's a 100% increase. And I want you to know I do support that SANDAG is that much better than what it was. And I think it's all justified. But I think we ought to understand what the problem was. And a lot of the problem was because of the way that the TransNet ordinance was written and conceived and was passed. And I've always thought that it probably would not have passed with all that road widening if it would have come after Al Gore's movie Inconvenient Truth, and people would have found out about climate change and gotten interested in that. That was certainly life-changing for myself. And I just think it might have swayed that election, and we might have had a better ordinance. There's a lot of brainwashing in there. There's a lot of talk about congestion relief projects and so on and so forth. And we now know that they are no such thing. They are not congestion relief, that when you widen freeways, people adjust to that increased mobility and they drive more. And the congestion goes right to where it was. And likewise, you could make freeways smaller, and you would have more congestion for a little while, and then it would go back to the way it was because people adjust. And so the RTCIP, I think, is also ill-conceived. The fact that you're going to assess people money because they're going to build a house, you're going to have growth. And it's not needed in that way because people would adjust. And that's important for infill housing and those kind of considerations, to realize that it's not as bad as it might look, all those new trips, because people will adjust and it goes to the level of traffic that people will accept. And that's what it's all about. I think the 100% increase does suggest a higher standard, and it looks like that's exactly where they're going. But I think the standard should also include achieving climate stabilization and being explicit about that, and the RTP being tied to that and conforming to a plan which achieves that. And that's what I try to talk about. And equity to me also means climate stabilization, because it's not fair to young people what we're doing to the climate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock.
Vice Chair, we do have one additional hand raised, Nicole Burgess.
Thank you, Francesca, and then thank you for a second public comment after me. And thank you, Chair Gloria, for the time and opportunity to speak on the board. Reading the ordinance, we are still here and listening. You intrigued a lot of us here. It's still heartbreaking to hear so many highway expansions out into the East County. Really, is that equity? There were some good BRT projects, so that's good to see. 280 million is just crumbs for bike infrastructure and active transportation. And I can recall, Mr. Gloria, Mayor, you sitting across the transportation chair board almost probably 10 years ago, and I had some 5th and 6th graders there, and they shared this chart of how when you invest in active transportation, you get the ridership you want. And that's what I want to see. I want to see healthy young people out there enjoying our streets. When Portland invests 8% into their transportation, they get 8% ridership. When Holland invests 40%, over 40% into bike infrastructure, they get 50% of people going by bike. It is like, we have to think big, and we have to think that we all want to be out there, and 2% is going to just maintain 2% ridership. Thank you, Ray Trainer, for the comments at the end, really inspiring us to know that SANDAG is transforming and improving. And I love your words: agile, adapt, and be responsive. That's exactly how I am on a bike. I'm adapting and enjoying my communities. And, I speak here today because I know the 18 of you mayors out there have a lot of concern for your residents, for the health of your communities. And so when we look at what we can do directly in our communities. And then just lastly, one last comment, definition of transit. Where do pedicabs come in? That's a great form of transit. In fact, one of my favorite quotes was by Mayor of DC, and he said, "Bike share is one of my best forms of transit." And that doesn't even include e-bikes. So, you know, we have a long way to go. We need to have more investments and prioritization into active transportation. And that is why I completely support complete corridors, multimodal access along these major highway expansions that are continuing to happen. I'm going to turn it over for Ms. Paula Gandolfo to make a public comment, if okay.
Please proceed. Paula, is that right? Paula, please state your name at the beginning of your testimony.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Paula Gandolfo. I'm a resident of San Diego. And I was listening in on Hassan's meeting a couple of months ago when I heard him saying that within the state, there was a moratorium going to be on pouring concrete, and that instead there was going to be reprioritization of the utilization of how the roads are utilized, turning some roads into faster, some roads into more expensive, but also some places to be utilized for the public for things like a slow street. And so I was really disappointed when I heard this entire reading, which, by the way, magnificent reading. Thank you very much. Because I want to know that the local streets are going to be available for the local community members. They must use those streets twice a day, every day, for every one of their necessary daily activities. And until we mayors, Mr. Mayors, look at your community and look at the edge of your community and how can you hold hands with your next community and make those critical connections for anyone on wheels, whether it's over a bridge or over a river or over a freeway, then you're not really helping the local community with what they need in the way of local tools to solve their local problems, which, by the way, will solve a lot of our environmental problems. So I want us to think regionally, but I want us to act locally. I know that within my community, there are certain places where paint on the ground would teach both drivers who come in once in their lifetime, as well as people who drive there every day. Oh, look, I have to share this spot with a bicyclist. And since some of those Vision Zero corridors are in Pacific Beach, 2 of them, in fact, we have the most utilized intersection in San Diego, East Mission Bay Drive, Garnett, Balboa. And we have Garnett, the other end of it, at Mission Boulevard. We should get a complete corridor through that entire Vision Zero corridor. And I know that you guys want to look successful. Believe me, you do a couple of these top 10 Vision Zero projects and turn on the trolley and you will begin to see less ridership, increased ridership in the trolley, and a beautiful, cleaner environment for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula. Any additional comments, Clerk?
No, Vice Chair, that concludes the public comments.
Good. Just for clarity's sake and for the record, the reading of the TransNet ordinance was the reading of a 17-year-old document. This is not what the city, what this regional body is necessarily intending to do going forward. We'll be making that decision later this year. I want to return it to the board for comments and questions. I'll just lead off, if I may, by thanking SANDAG for providing so much information this morning about this year's budget and the reason why this request is necessary. With the work that we are embarking upon to establish that new regional plan later this year, I certainly support the need for investment in this organization, in its people, and the organization itself, to improve our processes and to invest in particularly in the areas of data quality, modeling, and auditing. I think that number of us were on the board a few years ago, and we saw what could happen when we do not have good data upon which for which we can rely upon. And this is an attempt to fix that. This board cannot fix the problems that we don't know about. So understanding the resources being requested to ensure good data is something that I'm certainly happy to support. And I'd ask that SANDAG continue to provide the board with frequent updates as you implement this strategic framework so that we can track and make recommendations related to these process improvements going forward. Finally, I just would repeat my appreciation to our independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee for reviewing this item and providing their insight recommendation to this board. Reminder to my colleagues, it was a recommendation for approval. Those comments, I'm happy to seek the input and comments of my fellow board members. Of course, you may raise your hand if you'd like to be recognized. Mayor Gasterlin, I see your hand is raised.
I'll make my comment extremely short. The City of Del Mar, and I represent the City of Del Mar here on this board, is fully supportive of these changes in plans. The data, the planning are essential, and more data, more thinking up front is going to lead to better decisions and hopefully cost savings that will make up for this extra 1%. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Bailey from Coronado.
Thank you, Mayor Gloria. I have a question for staff. Could anyone from staff inform the board on what funding alternatives were considered besides TransNet to fulfill these obligations or to fill these investments?
Maybe I could start that, Mayor Bailey. So, currently in our budget, we have about approximately 104 funding sources, both federal, state, and local level. And I think as we look through the program or projects that we have, particularly the TransNet, I think, currently there's 20 transit projects in our OWP that we're looking for funding. And so basically we have to match what programs we're doing with what funding sources that we go after. And so the majority of what we're looking for today in the increase always related to the TransNet work that we're doing. And so obviously that's the very first place that we look at. But as you know, being in a local city, funding sources are very limited, and so they're very precious to us. And that being said, we basically try to allocate exactly where the funding is going to the projects in need, and basically that's why we looked strictly at, or the majority of what we're looking for today for the increase in our budget is from the transit sources.
Thank you for that answer. So is it fair to say then we didn't really look outside of TransNet for alternatives?
No, I mean, I think every year when we bring the budget to the board, there's obviously more project needs than there are resources. So we look at every single resource that's available to us, again, from the federal level, state level, and local funding sources that we have. We look at all of them.
And so are you suggesting then that there are no other potential funding sources outside of making an amendment to the TransNet ordinance?
At this time, I think what we're suggesting is probably the most appropriate based on the projects and the program of needs for the transit program.
Okay, thank you.
I see no other hands raised by board members. If there's no additional discussion on this item, I would welcome a motion.
I would so move to approve. This Jack from La Mesa.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Gasterlin, Del Mar.
I believe what I heard was a motion on the proposed amendment from La Mesa, and it was seconded. I think I heard Encinitas, Councilmember Mosca. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe. So we have a motion and a second. I would ask the clerk to please open the roll and tally and call a vote.
Thank you very much. For the City of Carlsbad, Mayor Hall.
No.
Mayor Hall. I'm sorry, Mayor Hall, could you repeat your vote?
No.
Thank you.
Carlsbad, no.
For the City of Chula Vista, Mayor Salas. I'll come back to Mayor Salas. For the City of Coronado, Mayor Bailey.
Bailey, no.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. For the City of Del Mar, Mayor Gasterlin.
See you later.
Councilmember Del Mar, aye.
What happens now?
May I ask someone is unmuted who probably doesn't prefer to be? Thank you.
No, I'm here. It's Mayor Salas.
Thank you, Mayor Salas. If you'd like to go ahead and state your vote for the record.
Yes, Salas, aye.
Thank you very much. For the City of El Cajon, Mayor Wells.
No.
Thank you. For the City of Encinitas, Councilmember Mosca.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Escondido, Mayor McNamara.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Imperial Beach, Mayor Dedina.
Imperial Beach, yes.
Thank you. For the City of La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Lemon Grove, Councilmember Mendoza. Councilmember Mendoza, I believe I heard an aye, but could you repeat that for me?
Aye.
Thank you very much. For the City of National City, Mayor Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Thank you. For the City of Oceanside, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Rodriguez, no.
Thank you. For the City of Poway, Mayor Voss.
No.
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Gloria.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of San Marcos, Mayor Jones.
Jones, no.
Thank you. For the City of Santee, Mayor Minto.
Minto, no.
Thank you. For the City of Solana Beach, Mayor Hebner.
Hebner, yes.
Thank you. And for the City of Vista, Mayor Ritter.
Ritter, no.
Thank you very much. And that motion does not pass.
Chair, I call for the weighted vote.
Very good. Thank you, Clerk. I have a request for a weighted vote from, I believe that was National City. Is that correct?
Dina, Imperial Beach, second.
Can I clarify, was that National City that made the motion for a weighted?
Sorry, yes, Chair. I gave
Thank
the
you.
thumbs up, but yes, that was Sotelo Solis for the call for the weighted vote.
Very good. Thank you. So we have a motion, we have a request for a weighted vote from National City with a second from Imperial Beach. I see we have a hand raised from a board member. I don't know, is additional comments, discussion of this, Mr. Kirk, can you help me? Is that in order at this point, or do we take the vote?
If it's a point of order, it can be interjected.
Okay, Mayor Bailey, I see your hands raised. Is this a point of order?
This is a point of order. Thank you, Mayor Gloria.
Yeah.
Question for legal counsel. When TransNet was passed in 2014, at the time, the voting structure of SANDAG required both a tally vote and a weighted vote when the voters adopted the TransNet ordinance. I am raising a point of order that we should not be making amendments to the TransNet ordinance without using the 2/3 tally and 2/3 weighted.
Your point of order is noted.
Would you care to comment on that, Mr. Kirk?
The state of the law today is different than the state of the law was when it was passed. The San Diego Transportation Commission Act specifically references that SANDAG's bylaws, rules, and regulations shall govern proceedings for the administration of the commission. Those have changed over time, both in terms of the allocation of the weighted vote. Those have changed between jurisdictions during that time. The history of that is that those have been, even though those were different over time from when they were initially applied, those have been consistently updated and applied to amendments to the TransNet ordinance. So ultimately today, the rules of SANDAG as they have been modified apply to the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. Thank you, Mayor Bailey. I'd like to call the clerk to roll call vote to call the roll on the weighted vote. Clerk, please proceed.
Thank you, Vice Chair. For the City of Carlsbad, Mayor Hall.
Chula Vista will be next.
I'll come back to Mayor Hall. For the City of Chula Vista, Mayor Salas.
Salas, aye.
Thank you. For the City of Coronado, Mayor Bailey. Mayor Bailey is absent. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of Del Mar, Mayor Gasterland.
Aye for Del Mar.
Thank you. For the City of El Cajon, Mayor Wells. The City of El Cajon is absent. For the City of Encinitas, Councilmember Mosca.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Escondido, Mayor McNamara.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Imperial Beach, Mayor Dedina.
Imperial Beach, yes.
Thank you. For the City of La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Lemon Grove, Councilmember Mendoza.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of National City, Mayor Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, present and accounted for, aye.
Thank you. For the City of Oceanside, Councilmember Rodriguez. The City of Oceanside is absent. For the City of Poway, Mayor Voss. The City of Poway is absent. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Gloria.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of, the City of San Marcos, Mayor Jones. The City of San Marcos is absent. For the City of Santee, Mayor Minto. The City of Santee is absent. For the City of Solana Beach, Mayor Huebner.
Huebner, aye.
Thank you. For the City of Vista, Mayor Ritter. The City of Vista is absent. I'll come back to the City of Carlsbad, Mayor Hall. The City of Carlsbad is absent. And I apologize, I need to call the B seats. So for the County of San Diego, Supervisor Anderson. The County of San Diego, seat B is absent. And for the City of San Diego, Council President Campbell.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And just a moment for the vote results. And that motion does pass with those members present.
Very good. Thank you, Clerk. Thank you for the members who showed up to work today. We'll move on to the next item, number 12. It's the proposed final fiscal year 22 program budget, which is the executive committee voted on this morning to recommend to the board. Andre, I believe you have a brief presentation.
I do. Thank you, Vice Chair. Good morning, members of the board. So we are here today to present the final proposed fiscal year 22 program budget. In presentations made to the executive committee and the board of directors in March, we reviewed the draft budget highlights, expected funding status, discussed budget adjustments such as the increased transit administration funds and use of contingency reserves. Today's report will be brief as it only focuses on changes made since the March draft budget. As a reminder, the proposed fiscal year 22 program budget totals $1.13 billion and includes $687 million in projected spending on capital improvements for next year, primarily consisting of the transit program of projects, $52.1 million for the planning and data program we call the overall work program budget or the OWP, and $60.8 million for regional operations. Now, when the draft budget was presented in March, we let you know that a salary range study was in progress and the results will be available in time for you to consider as part of the final budget. Salary range studies help to ensure SANDAG has competitive pay rates and support our goals for attracting and retaining employees. As Mary Kay's compensation program audit noted last year, if we don't have these studies regularly, we won't know if we have market competitive rates. SANDAG typically conducts compensation studies every 2 to 3 years. The recommendations from the most recent study are shown in attachment 4. The proposed salary range recommendations do not change the draft budget presented in March. Staff had already proposed 2 compensation pools in the draft budget, 3% for performance rewards and 1% for equity adjustments. As a reminder, the 1% pool will be used for base pay increases needed as a result of the study. These are for market or internal equity purposes. Now, the changes since the draft budget increase a decrease of $500,000 That is a very small 0.04% difference from draft to final. Details of the proposed changes are shown in attachment 3, but here are just a few of the highlights. And the OWP budget is decreasing by $1 million due to a revised cash flow of the 5310 vehicles project. The operations final proposed budget has increase of $600,000 based on a new ARGIS grant that we just got awarded in March. And the changes to the capital since March show an increase to the multi-year budget of $42.5 million. These multi-year capital changes include a $19.2 million of coronavirus response and relief funds for the bike program, $11 million of STIP and NCTD funds for the Delmar 4 Bluffs 4 project, and a new grant for $9.6 million from the FHWA for the next operating system implementation project beginning in fiscal year 22 and continuing through fiscal year 25. So today, the Board of Directors is asked to adopt Regional Transportation Commission RTC Resolution Number RTC-21-07, adopting the final fiscal year 22 program budget. That concludes my comments, Vice Chair, and I'll be glad to take any comments.
Thank you so much, Andre. I'll ask Francesca, do we have any public commenters on this item?
No, Vice Chair, I don't see any hands.
Very good. Then I will bring it back to the board for questions or comments of staff. Sorry, my screen is floating around. Actually, well, this is a pickle. Mayor Bailey is listed as an attendee, so that'd be under public comment, but I believe he wants to speak as a, wow, you promoted him. There we go. Mayor Bailey, did you still wish to speak on this item?
No, sir, just make myself known that I was here and wanted to log back in. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you, sir. I see no one raising their hands. Very good. I will ask if there's a motion on this item.
This is item 12, and I do have my hand raised, Chair.
Sorry, I must have just done that. I apologize. Councilmember Rodriguez, please.
Yeah, sorry, I had some technical issues earlier. We're on item 12, is that correct?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, I have some items I would like to present. One moment. So in reviewing this item, I have some concerns. I have a lot of concerns, but the one I would like to bring up and have further discussion on is I've noticed significant disparities between the IPA salary and other similar positions within SANDAG with respect to credentials, education, responsibilities. If you go to page 98 of the 622-page document, it shows the 2022 classification salary range table. Just for reference, the IPA is listed under a classification number 135, which is right alongside, the department directors that has a maximum salary of $244,000. Department directors, for example, they don't answer to the board, and they're not required to have the education standards and licensing like the IPA. If you go down a little further on the classifications to number 139, for example, there you'll find executive staff listed. Again, they don't have to report to the board, but to Hassan. And many of these executives do not require the same special licensing, but are paid at a level significantly higher than the IPA. As an example, the chief financial officer is under a higher pay class, 139. And this position does require the same number of years experience, education, and licensing as the IPA, yet is paid significantly higher at a maximum of $296,000 a year. How can we justify these actions? How can we reduce the importance of the auditor, who has a significantly higher responsibility of oversight, to include the $1 billion, but over $1 billion budget with already limited staff and resources? I really find this hard to justify to the public, that we see others that do not report to the board as more important and warrant higher pay. Finally, there is an issue here when the IPA, the only person other than the executive director Hassan, who by the way is paid a maximum of $438,000, and being placed at this lower level of 135 and not up with the executive. So the last thing I want to point out is that at the AC meeting in April, this was discussed, and the IPA has not seen a pay raise in over 2.5 years. Many of these executives that I just went over, they already received large pay raises in 2020, and they're about to receive another one in this budget. And so I would like to see this disparity closed and her pay to be in line with her significant responsibilities and to move her up to a class of 139. And I would like staff feedback on that and fellow board members' comments about that.
Well, I'd welcome staff's comments. I would just remind my colleague that Mayors Voss and Blakespear were appointed by this board to an ad hoc committee to address this issue. I believe, and please staff correct me if I'm wrong, that ad hoc committee is intended to come back to us next month for additional action. Was that Mayor Voss I heard?
Yeah. Let me just say briefly, the chair and I had one meeting of this small ad hoc committee. We have every intention of coming back to the board on, I think it's June 11th. We are looking at some options. No decisions have been made yet, but we want to make sure that the IPA is fairly compensated. So I would just ask for a little patience and forbearance. Give us a little bit of time to work through it, and we'll be back to you June 11th.
Appreciate that feedback, Mayor, and that update to the board. And I don't believe there's anything that would limit us from being able to accept your recommendations if there's a change. Today's action would not exclude a modification in the future should you and the chair come back with a different number or amount or anything like that. Can anyone correct me if I'm wrong on that point? Hear no corrections. I'm guessing I'm right. I'm going to stay here all day. I see, I believe Councilmember Rodriguez lowered his hand, so we'll go to Mayor Sotelo Solis. Is your hands raised?
Yes, thank you so much, Chair. And I just want to thank staff. Am I unmuted? Yes. I want to thank staff for all of their work. You know, we know that anytime we discuss budgets and really looking at what we as an organization prioritize, it's both a balance of projects, it's a balance of services, and it's a balance of personnel. And I think what we are doing and what the proposed final fiscal year 2022 budget is a great reflection of that. And as Mayor Voss mentioned earlier, you know, this is with regards to the independent auditor's office. We can revisit that when their recommendation comes forward. But I would actually move that we adopt the fiscal year budget for 2022 and really start moving forward. You know, it's interesting. We really have, again, as elected officials, a fiscal responsibility and a moral obligation, one, to be present at our meetings to, you know, voice those concerns, not to be pouty and protest, but to be here and express those concerns. And I think that the work that our staff has done has demonstrated not only their commitment to moving our transportation priorities forward, but the community's priorities forward. I mean, when we talk about the equity statement, when we talk about the big 5 moves, when we talk about the overall engagement with data and, you know, the infinity symbol and really looking at it long term, this isn't a one pill solution, but this is one drop in the bucket to making our region Class Act #1. And I would really urge my colleagues to move forward with this budget as provided and proposed by staff. So I move to adopt item 12.
I second the motion.
Thank you,
Mrs.
Mayor.
Campbell.
We have a motion by National City, was seconded by the City of San Diego, Council President Campbell. We'll go now to Mayor Gaslin Del Mar.
Yeah, again, I'll keep my comments brief. So first, I love the infinity symbol, and I'll propose the notion of when we do proofs in computer science, we think about infinity plus one. So I'll leave you with that idea. I fully support this budget, but I do want to say some words about Chris Rodriguez's point that our auditor is such an important person as part of this SANDAG board process. And I fully support this auditor in particular as being considered for that higher role classification that Councilmember Rodriguez and Board Member Rodriguez has talked about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll go to Mayor Minto and Santee.
Hi there. You know what? I just want to say that I appreciate all the hard work the staff does. There are so many moving parts here. I think it's almost impossible to not have somebody have a disagreement on occasion. And the hard work that they do, I think this entire board would say they appreciate it. I know I appreciate it quite a bit. In reference to what Chris was talking about, and I absolutely agree. I have to admit that I wasn't quite looking at those numbers in the same way he was. And I knew that there was going to be something coming back to us later on. Having said that, though, even though there's a possibility of amending in a month or 2 months a budget that would reflect a difference in salary range or an actual bump in pay, I think that it's better if we approve our budget when we have everything ready to go. Now, if it was something like we discovered this a month later or 2 months later, I could see doing an amendment. I just think that we should get it all at one point in time. I think it just makes it better. That's the way we do it at our council meetings and if we find mistakes or whatever, we bring it back at a later date. It just makes better sense to me. And that could just be me. But I think that, Jack mentioned, we should do things like we do at our own council meetings. And this is the way we do it at my council meeting in my city. And so I guess I would say, let's table this until after, the chair and Mayor Voss come back to us with the recommendation. So that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Mayor, thank you for those comments. I will not get in the habit of commenting after every after every board member's comment, but I do want to point out that the modification, if you took the range that Councilmember Rodriguez was talking about, you're talking about a $50,000 differential off of a $1.3 billion budget. I would not recommend this board fail to take action on adopting a budget for the want of a $50,000 budget adjustment. We can 100% come back in June, assuming there is a recommendation to do more. Maybe there's a world where there's less. I don't know. But I think that we should have an informed conversation about that. And again, this board had the wisdom to flag this issue a number of weeks ago. We will have this back here in a month's time, not two, next month for further discussion. But let's put this in some magnitude of scale of what we're talking about. I don't think it's advisable to hold up a budget or not vote on this item today for want of $50,000. Mayor Jones, I see you have it, and then we'll go to Councilmember Shu.
Yes, thank you so much. So for me, I need a class comp organization chart and a salary range table to match. This does not match. So I have a problem with that personally. I like to have all of my T's crossed and my I's dotted. So I can't support it because it's asking us to adopt it as if it is correct. And in my opinion, if we're going to make changes to it, I don't actually approve things before. It'd be like approving car repairs, even though you are not going to actually have those repairs done, potentially. I just can't support something like that. So being that it is an adopt as is, I cannot support it for that reason, because the class comp study and then the organizational chart do not align. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll go to Councilmember Shu, be followed by Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you. And to my fellow board members, I fully respect your concerns. But, you know, we have a schedule, and as a board member, it's incumbent on me, at least for myself, to do my homework in advance. And that if I have a issue with a item like a budget, that if I bring up an objection, I come up with a solution. And with regards to the independent audit salary issue, it was brought up before, and we put in a process to try to rectify that. And I trust that process with Mayor Voss and Chair Blakespear. And I hope to fully support their recommendations that it comes up later. The organization of SANDAG is quite large, and I think we should respect this large budget and move things forward. We have a process now in place to address this issue that Councilmember Rodriguez brought up. So I hope we can move forward on this issue now. Quite frankly, it's upon me to do my homework so that I don't hold up this organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. We'll go to Councilmember Rodriguez.
Just hearing my colleagues' comments, I mean, we have the full board here, which obviously has the authority and, you know, if there's the will to make the change today, and we can get all colleagues, you know, on board with that, then what's stopping us from making the modification today? It seems there's consensus that there's disparities there. Could we consider making the change today, and you know, the ad hoc can move forward and come back with a recommendation that maybe says something slightly different, but at least we get everybody on board today?
I don't know if that's a question about legality and what we're permitted or noticed to do. I don't know if staff has a response for the council member.
In terms of legality, if the majority of the board sees fit to make amendments to any part of the budget, that can certainly happen under your regular voting threshold.
And so, okay, clearing that up, then the question would be for the board if you want to do that. I, again, believe that this board has already set our chair and our former chair on this particular effort. I don't have their wisdom of their recommendation or any other additional information other than what Mr. Councilmember Rodriguez raised in his reference to the page in our backup. You know.
Mayor Voss, how would you feel about us making a modification on that today without having a brief conversation with Chair Blakespear? I mean, are you okay with us potentially making a modification today? What are your thoughts on that?
Chair, point of order. The motion on the floor is, if I could, the motion on the floor is to move forward with the recommendation as proposed on item 12, again, with having had Member Voss and Chair Blakespear say that in the month of June, we will be able to provide that detail. I stand with my motion and the, I believe the second from Mr. Shu, and I would call for the vote. Again, I get it that Member Rodriguez is wanting to push this, but I don't feel comfortable making a decision on somebody's salary when we have two of our leaders, both being a bipartisan effort to come back in just a few weeks. So I would ask to call the vote, but that's my request right now through the chair.
Appreciate those comments. Mr. Rodriguez has lowered his hand. See Mayor Dedina. We're starting to get second bites of the apple around here, guys. So I'm going to force this question. We would like to make sure that we get to our final item today and give you maybe some of your time back. And let's not forget we have non-agenda public comments. So Councilmember Rodriguez, sir, I'm going to get those other two. You either leave the hand up or you take it down. But I want to be efficient in this meeting, sir. Mayor Dedina, Councilmember Shu, Councilmember Rodriguez, and I'd like to call the question if we may.
Yeah, just a point, point of order. If we're gonna run meetings like we run, cities, in our city, we don't put our staff through medieval like torture and make them read documents for an hour, like, it was the Middle Ages, right? I'm not diplomatic. It was horse doo-doo. It was ridiculous. It was, I think, harassment of our staff. If I think in the future, if our council members or members of SANDAG want to apply some sort of torture device to staff, then you can stand up and in person read the documents yourself. I think that should be some sort of bylaw change. Number two, we sure don't walk out in a meeting when we don't get something that we like. Number three, what we do is when a staff member like Ray Trainer texts us in advance and asks if we have any questions, in good faith, we say, hey, we have a question about the budget item, but we don't waste our time with this ridiculous stuff. It's like 0.111% of $1 billion budget. So let's move forward with the business. My residents aren't concerned about looking at the minutes from 5 years ago. They're not concerned about this for sure. They trust Catherine Blakespeare and Steve Voss to look at that like we asked them to. They're concerned about pollution, making sure they have a job. They want to make sure that SANDAG helps us invest in roads. They want to address climate change and erosion, just like in Oceanside. So all kinds of things going on, and none of it has to do with this ridiculous grandstanding that I see all the time. God forbid it has to continue, because this is a joke. So that's my undiplomatic take on this, but it's got to stop. And I'm assuming when we do this in person, this stuff is going to end, I hope. It's a lot easier to do on the phone when
Thank you, Mayor. As advertised, undiplomatic, but I appreciate it. Mr. Shu, if you would be very expeditious, I'd like to make us to have this vote and get to our final item.
Thank you very much. I'll make it very quick. I think, at least in my culture, respect is important. I respect the process that we put forward, and having Mayor Voss and Chair Blakespeare deal with this issue, I think we should leave it to them and go ahead and vote on this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shu. Madam Clerk, I'd ask you to please open the roll and call the vote.
Thank you, Vice Chair. For the City of Carlsbad, Mayor Hall. The City of Carlsbad is absent. For the City of Chula Vista.
I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
I would just like to say kindness matters, and I vote no.
Thank you. For the City of Chula Vista, Mayor Salas.
Salas, yes.
Thank you. For the City of Coronado, Mayor Bailey.
You can't have regional support when you continually marginalize 40% of the cities. By calling for the weighted vote, I vote no.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of Del Mar, Mayor Gasterland.
Thanks, Mayor Gasterland. I kindly vote aye.
Thank you. For the City of El Cajon, Mayor Wells.
No.
Thank you. For the City of Encinitas, Councilmember Mosca.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Escondido, Mayor McNamara.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Imperial Beach, Mayor Dedina.
Imperial Beach, yes.
Thank you. For the City of La Mesa, Councilmember Shu.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of Lemon Grove, Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Thank you. For the City of National City, Mayor Sotelo Solis.
Solis, aye.
Thank you. For the City of Oceanside, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Diplomatically, no.
Thank you. For the City of Poway, Mayor Voss.
No.
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Gloria.
Aye.
Thank you. For the City of San Marcos, Mayor Jones.
Jones, no.
Thank you. For the City of Santee, Mayor Minto.
Minto, no.
Thank you. For the City of Solana Beach, Mayor Huebner.
Huebner, yes.
Thank you. And for the City of Vista, Mayor Ritter.
Ritter, no.
Thank you very much. And that motion does pass.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Very good. We'll move to the final discussion item on our agenda this morning, item number 13. This is last but certainly not least, we have an update on the San Diego LOSSAN Regional Rail Corridor Improvement Study. I like to call these one of those San Diego specials, something that we've been talking about endlessly for a very, very, very long time. I'm glad to say that this morning's report shows that we're now going to start doing something about it. As Mayor Hall well knows, and has educated me over the years, the LOSSAN corridor is our only rail connection to the rest of California and the nation. Our people, our goods, our military depend upon it, and we cannot afford to move forward on a long-term solution. We cannot afford not to move forward with a long-term solution. SANDAG has made tremendous strides over the past couple of years to bring national attention to the LOSSAN corridor. And anyone who has been around knows that this would not have been possible without Linda Culp, which is why I'm still processing the fact that she's actually going to be retiring next month. And I will say, Linda, I'm not sure what we're going to do without you, but I certainly welcome you to this meeting, and I turn the floor over to you with extreme gratitude for your service to this region and to this organization. Linda, please proceed.
Thank you, Vice Chair Gloria, and thank you for those kind words. I appreciate those. Happy to be here today to give you an update on our LOSSAN Rail Corridor study, including some of the potential realignments in some of the key sections of the corridor. Next slide, please. Also have with me today Rob Plosky. He's with our HDR design team in case there are questions and answers at the end. Vice Chair, you summed up this slide very well. The importance of the LOSSAN corridor listed here. We are the second busiest intercity corridor behind the Northeast corridor, about $1 billion in goods carried. This is the only viable freight corridor for San Diego. We're fortunate to be in public ownership with the corridor between NCTD and MTS. And also mentioned it is part of the US DOD's strategic rail network. SANDAG's been very busy the last decade or so. We've identified more than $1 billion for capital improvements, mainly around the capacity improvements so that we can add additional passenger and freight service on the corridor. Next slide, please. In terms of the specific study, just to give you a little bit of background, first of all, we are looking at ways to do three things: reduce travel times on the corridor, increase capacity, and enhance the safety. And we're doing that through looking at different alignment alternatives along some key segments, other proposed improvements, and a lot of supporting documentation at the same time. Next slide. We do have a project development team that's been very effective in working with the technical team. You see the agencies listed there, and we're appreciative of the staff time that they have devoted to this. We also have an executive leadership task force that we've held one meeting with, and that's a continuation of California Secretary of Transportation David Kim's working group that focused last year on Del Mar Bluff improvements, as well as the SANDAG board that we're here today. Next slide. The first question, though, that we wanted to answer was, is it really operationally feasible to run higher speed service in the corridor? And so we set about answering that first. We wanted to evaluate technology in terms of additional or future locomotive technology, passenger cars, electrification. We wanted to, at the same time, keep the entire corridor in mind, the 351-mile LOSSAN corridor and its optimization study by the Rail Corridor Agency. Want to see if we have any impacts running higher speed on communications or signaling systems. And then we joined forces with our South Bay to Sereno corridor multimodal comprehensive planning effort, and specifically looking at a future Sereno Mesa mobility hub. And is it feasible to run, for example, coaster service to Sereno Mesa in the future? Next slide. So we do have some key infrastructure that we did assume in this analysis, and you can see some of the new stations listed there, additional double tracking, assuming 2 tunnel in the Del Mar and Miramar Hill sections, and then the ability to upgrade the line to run higher speed, 110 miles an hour. You can see those areas on the map. Next slide. And so this gives you one snapshot of some preliminary travel time analysis. So let me just kind of break this slide down. This is for an all stop service. Just say our coaster service is making all stops between Oceanside and downtown San Diego. Right now, they're new diesel technology, and you can see in our current alignment, that first bar adds up to about 56 minutes to make that trip from Oceanside to downtown San Diego. And if we run higher speed, you can see how the travel time improves, but I'll just draw your eye to the bottom line. If we'll be running future zero emissions locomotives, for example, at 110 miles an hour, then that 56-minute trip could potentially go down to 37 minutes. So that's a pretty significant time savings. And we've seen similar time savings for our limited stop service or the Pacific Surfliner, for example. Next slide. So just some findings on the operations side. First, we are recommending that the corridor upgrade to 110 miles an hour, up from the 90 mile an hour speed maximum right now. We didn't find any measurable benefits with running any higher speed, say going to 125. We did document benefits with the zero emission vehicles in terms of how fast it gets in and out of stations, for example. And then we want to also work with our freight partner. They did have some concerns with not running as fast, continuing to run about 60 miles an hour in a truly high speed corridor. So that's why we were limiting ourselves to 110. And then it did highlight for us, though, that there are some critical infrastructure improvements outside the San Diego region. For example, in South Orange County, that we have to be cognizant of if we were going to run and improve travel times in San Diego only to stop in Orange County, that we want to continue to work with our partners to make those improvements as well. Next slide. So turning our attention from the operations into some of these key realignment areas. And so the first one that comes up is our Del Mar area. And just to orient you on the map, on the left-hand side of the map, you can see a tip of the Del Mar Fairgrounds. You can see I-5 at the top of the map. Pacific Ocean would be at the bottom, for example. And so for the last couple of years, we've been studying at a conceptual level 5 different potential tunnel alignments, and those are shown in the colors. Ranging from on the west side at underneath Camino Del Mar or Highway 101, underneath Crest Canyon, we'd have actually 3 alignments, and then one over and underneath I-5. And the stars on these maps represent a proposed portal location. So what that would mean is I'm going south and I leave Solana Beach, I would go into the star would be a portal location, and that's where the tunnel would start. And then the corresponding star, that's where the tunnel would come out. Next slide. So we have some preliminary analysis, and let me just break down this table for you. First, for all 5 alignments, you can see the first column is the maximum speed. And today, trains can run, passenger trains can run 90, freight trains can run 60, not in all parts of the corridor, but they're authorized to do so in key segments. And you can see that all but one of the alignment alternatives meets our 110 mile an hour threshold for passengers. The I-5 would not. It's a little bit slower and curvier. On the middle bar, the capital cost comparison, if we use the Camino Del Mar tunnels, our bays, then you can kind of see how the other 4 alignments shake out, again, with I-5 being the highest cost. And then over on the right-hand side, in terms of travel time, I wanted to kind of have you visualize a trip on the train from Solana Beach south to the Old Town Transit Center. And first, if we're on our all-stop or our coaster service, right now that trip takes 31 minutes. If we have the Del Mar Tunnel alignments, you can see then that 31-minute trips go reduced to 28 minutes, 29 minutes, depending on the alignment. But if a zero emission vehicle is used, there are additional benefits, and you can see that, for example, that 31-minute trip could be made in something like 26 minutes. And then you see a corresponding trend with the limited stop or the Amtrak service, if you will. Next slide. So this is just a summary of those 5 alignments. You can see we talked about cost, the length of the project area versus the length of the tunnel. So not as the entire 4.5 to 5 miles would not be all tunnel. There would be some elevated structures, for example, getting to the portals, getting from the portals. And some of these could be quite deep. You can see underneath the Crest Canyon could be as deep as 480 feet below grade. The project development team did some substantial work in terms of some technical evaluation criteria and applying that criteria to all these alignments. And if you click one more time, what we recommend is we reduce the number of alignments from 5 to 2 and carry forward for additional analysis and design work the Camino Del Mar tunnel and then the higher speed alternative underneath Crest Canyon. Next slide, please. So turn attention a little farther south. This is in our Miramar Hill area. You can see the 5805 interchange. It's kind of on the top left-hand side of the photo. We've painted on in orange our near future mid-coast light rail line for reference, and this is a University City area. We have 2 alignment alternatives we're studying here, piggybacking on a Caltrans study they finished last year. One is the Torrey Pines in blue, and one is the UTC alignment in purple. Again, you can see those same proposed portal locations in stars. And if click again, we'll put up some analysis for you. Both of these tunnel alternatives reach our 110-mile-an-hour maximum speed for passenger trains. They're both fairly similar in cost at this kind of high level as we know it. But just to turn your attention on the travel time analysis, and where we really will see significant savings in the corridor will be through this Miramar tunnel. And I note that the maximum speed for service is 90 miles an hour today. That's across different segments of our corridor. But this is the slowest segment of the LOSSAN corridor between LA and San Diego, and trains are going about 25 miles an hour up this hill. So that translates into the travel time savings you see over the right-hand side. So for the all-stop service, that's our coaster service. Right now, that same 31-minute trip from Solana Beach to Old Town could go with the Miramar Hill Tunnel and with a zero emission vehicle to about 18 minutes. So some very significant time savings here for Miramar Hill Tunnel. Next slide, please. Again, just to summarize these, you can see we talked about cost. The length is very similar and the tunnel length is there. And the Torrey Pines is the deeper of the 2. And then we're not suggesting to pick one of these at this level of analysis. We're going to carry both of these alternatives into further study. Next slide. The last segment, just to spend a couple of minutes on, tunneling overall in general, and something very important, which is fire life safety. And so just to point out a couple of things that we are looking at that's important to note. And that is one, that we study tunnels that have similar ground conditions, similar geology. And we have some examples here right in Southern California. That middle photo, for example, is a Mission Valley East tunnel for our trolley system. We have examples in LA and other parts of the East Coast that we'll draw upon for the work that we're doing. Next slide. As I mentioned, very important to think about fire life safety. We have significant guidelines that we'll be following as well, and requirements. And, just some of the reasons that we might need to leave a tunnel without the train, for example, is, that there might be a fire in the tunnel, in the train, maybe a power outage, a derailment, other breakdown. So those are some important things to keep in mind, certainly as we're in the design phase and the planning phase. Next slide. And how would we get out? This photo shows you just one example. There could be cross passages. If it's 2 bored tunnels, there could be cross passages to get you from the affected tunnel into the next one and get you out safely. It could be an exit to the surface, walkways like you see in the right-hand side of this photo, and certainly emergency signage and that kind of thing to make this as easy and efficient as possible. Also things that we are very aware of as we're designing these 2 tunnels. Next slide. We did want to look at tunnels that have similar operations, and that being we have both freight and passenger service in our tunnels, and we have some tunnel examples both nationally, and we listed some here, and internationally that we'll be drawing upon. And we have team members right now that are well educated on all of these examples and will be very helpful in our analysis. Next slide. And then just to end up the presentation, to let you know what we've been doing and what we will be doing here. We have some building block documents, baseline documents that will be done this summer. Those are kind of guiding the tunnel alternatives and the other higher speed evaluation. We'll be wrapping up the Del Mar Tunnel alternatives analysis. We'll have about a 10% out of 100% engineering done. So very preliminary, but an important step. Same with Miramar Hill alignments this fall. And then we'll turn our attention to the rest of the corridor and look at where we could have higher speed improvements in those areas, and be finishing up next spring with a phasing and an implementation plan. We'll note that future phases of development of any of this work are pending funding, but we are actively looking right now for additional funding at the state and the federal level. So with that, I will stop. Thank you for the time and happy to take any questions and comments that you might have.
Very exciting presentation, Linda. Thank you very much. I am unable to view, there we go. I see it looks like we have a public commenter. Francesca, can you help me out?
Yes, we do.
We'll go to
Yes,
public
we do
commenters.
have. We do have some members of the public with their hand raised. I see 4 at the moment. We'll start with David Schobron, followed by Noah. David, you can go ahead.
Good morning. I'm David Schonbrun, president of the Train Riders Association of California. We're a statewide group. This is my first time at a SANDAG meeting. We strongly support both the Del Mar and the Miramar Hill tunnels. We believe these to be the most important rail projects in the entire state. And we are actively talking in the legislature about getting funding for these projects. We urge you to make sure that these projects are included in your regional transportation plan, even if in an unfunded portion of that plan, so that they can be rapidly advanced when funding arrives. And finally, we have an article, a centerfold article coming out in our new California Rail News, our newspaper, about the LOSSAN corridor and about how we see these improvements as critical to making it have the quality of the Northeast corridor. There's no reason why California should be number 2 in the United States. We think California can be number 1, and these improvements are critical to getting there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Next, we'll have Noah, followed by Udo Wan.
Good morning, Chair and Board. This is Noah Harris, Policy Advocate with Climate Action Campaign. We, again, today want to urge SANDAG to move the LOSSAN tracks off the Del Mar Bluffs as soon as possible. We want to thank SANDAG for working to identify alternative alignments through the corridor improvement study that will increase travel time and safety. Currently, the 1.6 mile stretch of tracks in Del Mar is located dangerously close to the edge of the bluffs, and several bluff failures within feet of the tracks have occurred over the past couple of years. With the bluffs eroding at approximately 6 inches per year and the ever-intensifying threat of sea level rise due to the climate crisis, these incredibly dangerous bluff failures will only increase in severity and frequency, putting lives seriously at risk. We need a transportation system that is climate safe and climate ready. Moving the tracks off the bluffs is essential to securing a long-term solution for the LOSSAN corridor, all while reducing greenhouse gas emissions, especially with zero emission vehicles, preventing increased air pollution from trucks on our roads, and ensuring economic prosperity for the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Next is Udo Wan, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, followed by Mike Bullock.
Hi, good morning. My name is Dr. Udo Wan, and I'm representing the Surfrider Foundation's San Diego County chapter. I'm calling in to thank the staff for the Rail Corridor Improvement Study update and to comment on the Del Mar realignment. We'd just like to acknowledge the study and support staff in pursuing all necessary action to move the study forward and to look towards the next steps for advancing with alternatives and in pursuing funding as soon as possible for the Del Mar realignment project. The faster this section of track is realigned, the less disastrous coastal access and beach erosion impacts we will see. Bluff stabilization concepts have recently been revealed to the public, and this is going to have a huge impact on our beaches and coastal access in Del Mar. We need SANDAG to ensure that at most, these approaches are temporary and will avoid as many long-term impacts to our bluffs and beaches as possible. The tidal zone is a precious environmental area that must be left undisturbed. Surfrider exists to protect the coastline, and that has naturally led us to become stewards for responsible sea level rise planning. Up and down the coast, we see countless instances of cities approaching the imminent threats of sea level rise and erosion by waiting for disaster to happen. That is not something that we can allow when it comes to the LOSSAN corridor, specifically the section which runs along Del Mar's sensitive coastal bluffs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our final speaker will be Mike Bullock.
Yeah, Honorable Board, Mike Bullock, Oceanside. And as has been the case recently, I'm very impressed with the work of SANDAG. It has certainly moved along. You are talking about electrification, and that's something that I've called for many years now in this consideration. And it was good to see it there. And I think that SANDAG needs to make sure that there is systems engineering alternatives analysis to determine how you're going to do that electrification. And of course, it's EV versus hydrogen fuel cell and then catenary. And I point out, my company sent me over to the UK 15 years ago, and all the trains there are electric. And I guess I should point out, if you ever flown into Philadelphia, you'll see the same thing. You go down and get your baggage, and you look out the window, and there's a full-size train. It looks just like a regular train, but it's electric. And so it's certainly time. And you just need to be sure that you're doing it the most efficient way. The other thing that wasn't mentioned in upgrade, and hopefully this will come, and that is automation. I drive a Tesla, and it just lacks software, and the software is constantly being upgraded. I have the actuators, and I have the sensors to have it become fully automated. And isn't that a lot more difficult than a fixed guideway automation? Automation needs to be also fare box and convenient to the riders, and be an efficient operation. Everything needs to be automated, and that's as it said in the Democratic platform, that's parking, road use, and transit should be all fully automated. The thing about the UTC is I sort of like that because of its connection with other transit. We've got the trolley line going up there and so on and so forth. And so I didn't see that mentioned in these alternative analysis. How well do those stations interact with the existing transit? Because that's what we really want to do, is reduce the need to drive. And so that I think that concludes my remarks. So thank you very much. And see, since I have a little time, I just have to comment on this process, because as a member of the public, we have to put up with a lot of delay. And I think you need to revise your rules relative to the weighted vote. If people leave the meeting for the purpose of the weighted vote, guess what? They left the meeting. They should not be allowed back in. You see them next meeting. And the thing is, that whole strategy is to defeat proportional representation. And a lot of people have shed blood to get the vote and to have proportional representation, and that's what that's about. And it's a little hard to take as a member of the public to see all that time wasted in that way. The weighted vote, and if you call for a quorum, it should be a weighted quorum. A weighted quorum, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Vice Chair, that does conclude the public comments.
Thank you, Clerk. We'll go back to members of the board. Not surprising, a lot of interest in our North Coast friends. So let me start. The order it is on my screen is Mayor Hall, Councilmember Shu, Mayor Huebner, Mayor Gasterlin, Councilmember Krantz. So we'll just go in that order. Mayor Hall.
Sure. Thank you, Todd. And I really want to thank SANDAG staff for this report. And it's one of those things that the more you get into this, the deeper the thought. And I also want to thank SANDAG staff for the private briefings that we get that get us into even more detail. And one of the things that sparked my way of thinking is once you use the word high speed. And right now we're all focused in and around Del Mar, but when you say high speed, that kind of begins in Oceanside and continues down the coastline. And so when you're thinking about running high speed through our villages, that becomes something that we really need to have a conversation about. And so when I think about this, this plan's probably at best 15, 20 years to 40 years to build out. And so I want to just stop for a moment on the high speed. That's one piece of this. Also part of the conversation is mobility hubs, and how and where do we build our mobility hubs along the coast? And so when you think of how the rail line's located today, at least for Carlsbad, that is going to be challenging. And we're talking about also realignment, in and around Del Mar. One of the things that I think should have at least a conversation, if not consideration, is what if we were just to have one transit corridor and we use I-5? And when I say that, it wasn't too long ago when we studied I-5, and at that time, it was going to be 16 lanes is what was the maximum width. And so I just throw that out there. And then the final piece is we're all talking about how do you get more housing in and around the mobility hubs or our transit. At least in the city of Carlsbad, trying to get density in and around the coaster station at an affordability rate is near impossible. Whereas when you just move 5 or 6 blocks out to Interstate 5, just between Carlsbad Village Drive and Tamarack, we already have over 400 units, almost 500 units either being built or about to be built, and probably 80% of that is affordable. So when I look at this, I'm thinking more than just the moment in the Del Mar area. How do we incorporate everything else that's part of this bigger picture? And I surely would like to have a conversation, especially with Encinitas, Solana Beach, in Del Mar, as to, what are your thinking? Does this make any sense to you? And then I'll just leave it one final thought. How could you possibly repurpose the rail corridor, and what opportunities could that give us if we start thinking along those lines? So those are my comments. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll go to Councilmember Shu, then Mayor Huebner.
Thank you. First, we're going to miss Linda Culp and her work on this corridor. So I hope she comes back or doesn't go very far. I want to go back a bit and in time. Over 10 years ago, there was a lawsuit with Cleveland National Forest Foundation and Caltrans that resulted in a settlement in which a feasibility study was done for the Miramar Tunnel. The findings of that, I think, is important for us to note. One is that these tunnels are feasible, they're doable, they're affordable, and more importantly, on a practical note, had we done this, started this tunnel 10 years ago, we might be close to finishing. And when we do finish, commuters coming down the coast and to work and go back using the rail could have a savings of $350 a month by using rail rather than driving. So it is an economic boost and a direct benefit to residents along the coast. I think that's really important. And lastly, I'll give my traditional advocacy to note that the LOSSAN corridor is an international corridor. It needs to stop in Mexico, not in San Diego. We need this rail to go 110 miles an hour from Los Angeles to Tijuana. That'll take care of our traffic all along Interstate 5. Thank you.
Jack Shu raising the bar, everybody. Mayor Huebner.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. First of all, I have to echo, I'm sure it's positive for you, Linda, that you're going to be retiring, but a real loss to SANDAG. And I say that from experience of working with you closely over the years. So really sorry to hear that, but I know you're happy. I have a few questions. They're brief, and maybe we could do a back and forth with you, Linda. I wanted to ask if there are any changes proposed to the current locations of the train stations along the LOSSAN corridor in our San Diego region.
We've been focusing so far on the Del Mar and the Miramar Hill tunnel alignments. Don't anticipate them. We just haven't got to the rest of the corridor yet, but I don't anticipate any changes. It's hard for me to say at this point.
Okay, good news for me. So it looks to me as if this presentation showed that the Del Mar routes have been narrowed down to the two. And did I get this right? Crest Canyon above Carmel Valley Road and El Camino Real.
Yeah, it's the higher speed of the 3 Crest Canyon ones, so it would not go above.
I might suggest you change the name from scan. That's probably really not a great thing to be using for this. But I'm really not clear what these routes are, and I'm wondering if staff could send the board members a closer picture with street names on it and stuff, because I can't figure out what above and below Carmel Valley is. I will admit I'm a little directionally challenged. The other question that I have is, in the RTP, it says we're going to be getting the train tracks off the bluff at 2035. Is that realistic given all of this?
Well, right now at the study level we're at, we would anticipate 4 to 5 years. This is all pending funding, of course, but 4 or 5 years through environmental and design, and another 4 or 5 years in construction. So that's where you came up with about a 10-year time frame for implementation.
If I may add to what Linda, first of all, I would agree with you. I don't know we'll ever gonna replace Linda and fill the shoes. So I'm gonna miss her, but we know where she lives, and so she's not gonna.
I do too.
But let me just address this, and I say this with the most respect to Mayor Hall and others who keep saying, well, this is going to take 40 years and, you know, we could go to the 5 and we have 16 lanes. We're not going to add an inch of lanes to any freeway in this region, or not to the 5. And we need to enhance the capacity of the rail, and we need to work together with local, regional government to do this right. But I hope the leadership of this board, that's all of you, stop saying 40 years, 50 years. We're serious about this. We're serious about reimagining the future transportation system. And we're not going to waste anybody's time and do another study and put it on the shelf. So as leaders, we're now going to compete with 400 or 500 different employers around the country to get national funding. And like Mr. Shu, Councilmember Shu said, this is second busiest corridor in the country. In the 1970s, by the way, the trip took less than 2 hours. And now when we say high-speed rail, we say, well, it means high-speed rail, and we need to do it. And the region needs to commit to it. And any funding strategy in the future need to do that. But if we keep saying it's going to take 40 years, let us go to the 5, that's why we're doing the study. You allocated last September $3 million to do this. And I agree with Councilmember Shu. Have we listened to reason 10 years ago, we would probably be in construction right now. And to answer your question directly, this should be done actually even before 2035 if we're serious about it as a region.
Glad to hear that. Thank you so much, Hassan. Much appreciated. Sorry if you can hear the jets going over my house. My goodness. 2 more quick questions. One is that right now the train tracks go over the wetlands near Carmel Valley Road. I'm wondering if this alignment will change that, and how would that change that? And then how does one deal with the Catton area for the good?
Great questions. Great question. So yes, the alignment could potentially remove that section of berm in Los Penasquitos Lagoon, depending on the alternative picked. Certainly that would be an environmental benefit to the project. And then by electrification, there are non-catenary systems. And that's, we've heard that comment very loud and clear that, catenary would be a problem, but there are other options that we'd be looking at.
Like magnification on the rails or something like that? Yeah, that makes more sense to me. And my final question is, I'm glad that I think it was Jack who brought this up, or maybe it was Mike Bullock, and that is the Miramar Tunnel, the connections to the mid-coast would be really good. I'd like to see that, because that would be a huge benefit. I remember speaking about it years and years ago. And yeah, I wish we'd done this 10 years ago. So if we can get some more detail on the actual alignments that we're looking at, I would really appreciate that. I'm sure the rest of the board would. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll go to Mayor Gasterlin, followed by Councilmember Krantz.
Thank you very much. I'd like to draw your attention to my background behind me. Over my right shoulder, I'm looking through mirrored here, you'll see the train, the railroad going straight north to Solana Beach. So Lisa, hi. And where you see it bending, that's where the train slows down. And then it keeps slowing down as it goes along the Del Mar Bluff. I'm not going to show you a photo where the train is 3 feet away from the edge of the bluff in some of the places. The work that Linda's team has done, and they've done it, we know what's here now, has been of the utmost importance. And Linda, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You have brought professionalism and incredible wisdom to this project. I'm not going to make you put your matrix back up. We've done that several times in several of the presentations on this. And I thank you for your 2 hours with the city of Del Mar several weeks ago. The high-speed tunnel is head and shoulders above the others. Mayor Huebner asked exactly the right question, and that's what's the impact on the environment? This high-speed tunnel, where it would go right through the hill, I hope one day I'm sitting in real time and that's going to be the tunnel entrance right behind me here. It will cut out a huge swath of train tracks through the Penasquitos Lagoon. On the other end, where it comes out just to the northeast of, Portofino Road, at Carmel Valley Road, we need to think about what do we do best there to have minimal impact on that part of the lagoon. But I hope we can be creative about how we move forward. For example, can we get underway with the tunnel itself? Let's call the boring company, let's get the digging going, even as the EIR studies are done for the lagoon to find out exactly how we need to track these or connect these properly. Del Mar is on board. I've heard here and then that Del Mar is split about what to do here. Well, the Camino Del Mar alignment is not all that great. It has major lagoon impacts. It will go under homes. It'll go under the intersection at Del Mar Heights Road and Camino Del Mar. And then out right under Dick Fletcher's house where Ken Olson now lives. So this is quite personalized. This high-speed tunnel, this is the right thing to do for so many reasons. We have resident support. We had a unanimous vote of our city council. Everyone on our city council agrees the tracks need to be off the bluff. And we have strong, strong support, majority support for tunneling. I invite everyone here to come to Del Mar Plaza, take a walk down Jimmy Durante Boulevard toward the fairgrounds, and look left as you go. You'll see exactly these tracks, and you can think about how beautiful all of this can be. So let's get it going. Let's do it by 2030, and let's make this happen as a board. Let's do it now.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that energy. That's good stuff. We'll go to Councilmember Krantz, followed by Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And I would like to follow up the mayor's comments by saying that she has a couple of times now at meetings suggested that we should have this done by 2030. And I think one of the most important things that we need to do is manage expectations on when this can be accomplished. And certainly the biggest impediment to getting it done will be raising the revenue in order to do that. The last TransNet measure that was on the ballot was for a half cent, and it didn't pass. It didn't get the 2/3 required for passage. And the reality is that this particular project, just for the Del Mar tunnel, and Lord knows what it would be if you added in the Miramar tunnel, may add 2 or 3 cents to any TransNet measure. And so I think it's really important that we are honest with ourselves about the prospects of something like that, especially given what we've seen in this meeting this morning. The debates at SANDAG about revenue issues are always knock down, drag out. And I think that until we get to the point where we have identified reasonable ways to finance these projects, I think it's important that we come up with a strategy that we don't do our environmental analysis until we have that plan in place, because that's a critical part of this. We do it too early and we've wasted all that money. And in fact, the roughly possibly 200 million or so that it's going to take to do all the environmental analysis and engineering on this is going to be competing with shovel-ready projects that North County Transit District has already identified. So there's a little concern at the North County Transit District in terms of the competition for resources, but we are all in agreement that getting the trains off the bluff in Del Mar is critical. And so we have stabilized the bluffs with the help of some significant political players in our region to find the resources to stabilize the bluffs. That work will buy us some time, but the clock is ticking, and it's critical that we get serious about figuring out how this would be financed. And so I would strongly recommend that the board, the SANDAG board, put together a team that would be dedicated just to that, identifying how this might play out in terms of revenue raising measures, whether it's as part of a TransNet bill or how we might get help from the state or the federal government. It is STRACnet. It's got national and international implications. So a lot of work to be done on that. And I would strongly recommend an ad hoc group that is dedicated specifically to that, and political appointees, make sure there are people with some experience in the region with the politics of all of this that can help to define that. Finally, I too would like to thank Linda Culp for all the work that she's done. I know where she lives. She lives in Encinitas. She is a wise woman, and I'm looking forward to seeing her at Moonlight Beach or somewhere very relaxing like that, or maybe even enjoying the Coastal Rail Trail that she's worked so hard to get implemented in Cardiff. She's done a lot of great things for SANDAG and our region, and I very much appreciate the work that she's done and wish her the best in her retirement. So thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Tony. Move on to Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Hi, thank you so much. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and thank the work of staff in bringing this forward. This is absolutely just a paramount priority, certainly for folks in my district, but I'm really for not just the San Diego region, but all of California. It's a huge uphill battle. I know we've been pushing this boulder up a hill for a really long time, and I hope that we finally have the political will and the vision to bring the work of staff across the finish line, because this is just quite impressive. Really, really thankful for the work, and looking forward to working with all of you to go out and build the support that we need to raise the revenue to get this moving. So thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Supervisor. Councilmember easy for me to say, Councilmember Mosca.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Mayor. Happy to follow up after all those good incidents discussing here today. But just wanted to really briefly just say thank you to Linda and everything that she has done for our organization. As your representative to the LOSSAN agency on the board of directors, Linda has been just a really trusted advisor and has helped me out and has helped our region tremendously. So she's going to be missed, but as Tony said, she is an Encinitas, so I'll see her around, I hope. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. I see no other board members with their hands raised. I would say, Linda, I hope you feel the love this afternoon from this board, and deep appreciation for your service to this region on a multitude of projects. And with regard to this item, I'm excited to see some specificity being put down. I love hearing the excitement of our board members who really want to tackle this. I know that this is a front of mind concern for many San Diegans, both for those who love to ride it. We had a rider representative, but also those who depend upon it for their businesses. So appreciate the work that's going into this. Excited to see this go forward, and appreciate our executive director being extremely clear that we don't need to wait. We need to get moving. Lastly, I liked Mayor Hall's comments about the use of the existing right-of-way should it be not utilized going forward. I think that presents wonderful, amazing opportunities for greater coastal access, opportunities for public realm spaces, the kinds of stuff that could be iconic and incredibly quality of life enhancing. So just a lot of good stuff in this item. I think this is a high note to go out on, Linda, so well done. Any final comments from staff on this item before we move on to the end of our agenda?
No, thank you very much. And thanks again for the kind words, everyone. Appreciate it.
Extremely well deserved, Linda. Thank you again for your service. So that brings us to not quite the end of our agenda. As you recall, I moved non-agenda public comment to the end of our meeting, as well as board member comments. So Francesca, may I lean upon you? Do we have any folks in the queue? I know that some of the folks at the beginning have had the opportunity to speak on other items, but we want to give them their legal right to talk about anything that's not on the agenda.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. I do see Mike Bullock has his hand raised, and I know Nicole Burgess had a comment as well earlier. Nicole, if you're still on the line and would like to speak, please raise your hand again, and oh, there you are. Okay, so it'll be Mike followed by Nicole.
Wonderful.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Mike Bullock from Oceanside, and in your April 30th meeting, we heard from a San Diego planner on the San Diego Climate Action Plan and how it aligned with the 2021 RTP. It has been stated multiple times, and I agree with this, in the Union Tribune that the San Diego Climate Action Plan has an insufficient number of meaningful measures to reduce driving. Enforceable measures to reduce driving must be based on reasonable estimates that are based on data showing that those reductions. The San Diego planner only talked about zoning. Now, certainly, SANDAG properly estimates zoning and how much that zoning will be operational in a target year and models the per capita driving reduction. So yes, zoning helps. However, please keep in mind that climate scientists are telling us that the first climate stabilization target occurs in 2030 and the significant GHG reductions are required. And you do have the 2035 target also, which is not that far in the future. New zoning only produces overall driving reductions that are proportional to the fraction of all developments that are the new developments. So the question is, will the new developments conforming to the new zoning be 5% or 10% or 20% of the total development in 2030? And there were no numbers provided in that presentation. All CAPs need, and all RTPs need transportation measures that will reduce driving for all developments, new and old. These are measures that will increase biking, transit, walking, and working from home, and even considering the powerful force of induced traffic demand. Now, the best data I have found for pricing parking shows a 15% reduction in driving, and that's for the very worst cases. At many places of employment in the data, the value is well over 20%. And yet I only assume an 8% reduction in my work, which I have described to you. That is because the effect of induced traffic demand will always reduce the driving reduction when steady state conditions occur. So San Diego and SANDAG must include a method to ensure that a good car parking system is widely used to achieve a meaningful 2030 or 2035 target. And let's see, I do have one additional comment. Your April 30th presenter from Scripps talked about sea level rise as part of climate adaptation. Now, he should have stated clearly that climate adaptation is impossible unless we achieve climate stabilization. That's very important because, you know, climate adaptation sounds great, problem solved. I didn't know that we could adapt to climate change. Well, guess what? We cannot adapt to climate change if we don't achieve those climate stabilizing targets. There will be no hope. Any sea level rise will overwhelm us. It will bury us and we'll probably starve before we even worry about that. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Nicole, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Francesca, and thank you, Chair Gloria, and members that are still around and listening to public comments. It is really important that is happening, and so I appreciate it. LOSSAN corridor, it was great to hear all the support, and thank you for all your comments. Linda, it's been fabulous. I didn't realize you were retiring. You have been instrumental in the bike project team, and I appreciate all your work. So congratulations to you. Jack Shu, you always make amazing comments. I completely support an international train connecting to the border. That coaster should go to the border. As a coaster rider, I will hope that the coaster is reinstated soon. I have been trapped in Carlsbad and had to ride my bike home because service is not being given on the weekends. So just, you know, I really appreciate it. Bike Month. One thing, mental well-being is so important. Mayor Gloria, I saw your tag for Summer for All of Us. Just a representation that perhaps could be evaluated for this board is someone from, and I know people have noted it, from universities, educational component of our conversations, as we know, 30% of our transportation is around schools. So I'm a big proponent of safe routes to schools. And so their voice is critical to this as we're not even in school and we're seeing our VMTs all the way up already. So just lastly, Bike Month, remember most of our trips are within the local commute. So next time, just think of me when you put that key in the ignition and you're like, where am I going? Why am I not on the bike living the dream, right? So if you really want to know how your city and how your residents can improve their health, their mobility, everything why I stand here and take the time to be here on a Friday afternoon with all of you and the political stuff, I want us to come together. It's really about the region. And those of you who don't see the vision, we need to move on and really wonder how are we going to transform the way we move in San Diego? It is critical, and we cannot stay to this car culture mentality. So appreciate all the work, appreciate everybody supporting Vision Zero and making our streets safer. And I wish you a wonderful ride in this month and the months to come. Thank you so much for the time in your Friday afternoon.
Thank you, Nicole and Vice Chair Gloria. That does conclude the public comments.
Fantastic. I will take board member comment at this time. Any members of the board wishing to speak? Gustavo, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you, Vice Chair Gloria. I know it's late and everybody's hungry, so I'm going to be very brief. I wanted to let everybody know that tomorrow we're going to be closing a portion of State Route 94 during the day. It's on the eastbound direction between the routes of 805 and 125. This is so that we can perform swarm maintenance. This follows in the heels of other closures that we've been doing throughout the month of April on State Route 163 and in the last 2 weekends on State Route 94. We apologize to the public for the inconvenience, but it's the safest way that we can get all of this great work done, picking up litter, fixing potholes, taking care of landscape, electrical, signing and striping, and keeping everybody safe, including our workers and the public. So I'd like to thank all the Caltrans workers that continue volunteering for this weekend work while others are resting. And tomorrow I'm going to be joined by Assembly Member Dr. Akila Weber, as well as City of San Diego Council Member Montgomery Stepp, to thank the workers, as well as our partners that through programs like the Adopt a Highway program help us clean our freeways and keep them litter free. And then a future board meeting, I can talk a little bit about how this fits also within the Clean California proposal that the governor unveiled earlier this week. Also, I'd like to thank the board for approving item number 5. That is for the State Route 67 project that is currently advertised. And with the board action and the $37.5 million that the California Transportation Commission approved earlier this week, we will be able to repave 18 miles of State Route 67 between Lakeside and Ramona, fix some drainage items, as well as some active transportation improvements, and also to bring in fiber to this rural part of town, as well as conduit for potential broadband. And this brings us one step closer to bridging the digital divide in the rural parts of our county. So I'd like to thank Executive Director Ikrada for his leadership in this respect, for bringing concrete actions to the SANDAG equity statement that is very also closely aligned with the Caltrans equity statement. So again, to the board, and also the partnership with the County Board of Supervisors that voted at their last meeting also to contribute towards this project. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Linda, for your service on behalf of Caltrans. And we're definitely gonna miss you, and congratulations on your retirement.
Great words, Gustavo, and thank you to you and your team. I know the 163 look a lot better. 194 is gonna look great. I love that new bus lane on 94. Looks really good. Councilmember Shi, you have some board member comment?
One real quick note. I want to note that throughout this meeting, including the reading, we had an interpreter interpreting into Spanish, and I want to thank the interpreters for helping in this meeting. We appreciate them doing that so that we do have inclusive meetings. And I know they had to do a lot of work to interpret us, especially people like me who speak real fast. So thank you.
Equally guilty, council members. So thank you to our interpreters for sure. Any other board member comment? quick reminder, as our public commenter mentioned, next week is Bike Anywhere Week. We are encouraging folks to participate in that, to go by bike from May 16th to the 22nd. We have lots of fun activities planned, including a virtual bike yoga, a bilingual bike safety quick check, virtual bike commuting classes. I hope that you'll join all of us. Additionally, I want to remind everyone that we're holding 2 special board workshops next week on the draft 2021 regional plan, one on May 17th, the other on May 21st. It'll be the same presentation both days, so hopefully one of those 2 options will work for you. Obviously, important work that we will be accomplishing this year. With that, my apologies. I like to run a quick meeting. I was hoping to get you out by noon. I think adopting this budget, though, does take a little longer, so about 20 past. Appreciate your indulgence. Look forward to seeing you all back here for our next board meeting, which is Friday, May the 28th, 2021 at 9 a.m., where you will once again have our incredible chair, Blake Spear, in this seat. Until then, enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you soon.